We are live. What's going on, D-Bags? Hope you guys are doing well. Back at it again here with, yes, another episode of the Detox Podcast. I'm your host, Darren Rita. Feel free to connect with me at any of the links down below. And if you're new here and you enjoy music, podcasts, or comedy, do consider subscribing because we do a whole lot of that around here. And we're trying to get to 700 subs very soon. So I've got an incredible guest who it's taken almost a year, well, probably just about a year, to get him here on the show successfully. But before I can get into that, I got to talk to you guys a little bit about car insurance. So these days, it seems as if we're able to do more and more from home. So while you're at home, why aren't you saving money on your car insurance? Your hometown agency, Kenosha Auto Insurance, has specialized for years in simple, hassle-free car insurance using the latest and touch-free technology to help you and your family get the best rates. So what are you waiting for? Give them a call today at 262-448-4141. That's 448-4141. And the website is kenoshains.com. Should be right here on the screen. And one last time, that's 262-448-4141. Give them a call. Tell them Detox, Darren Rita sent you. And the worst that could happen is you will get the best rates. So let me pull up the live chat here on my phone before we continue going. And with all of that out of the way, I am beyond excited to be introducing my guest to you guys this week, because it's not every week I get to speak to someone who literally can read my mind and probably knows what I'm going to say before I even say it here in this intro. He's a magician, an author, a mind reader, mentalist, whatever you want to call him, but I call him Joe. So let's give a wet detox welcome to Joe Diamond. How are you, Joe?
Thanks so much, Darren. That's awesome. Yeah, some people just don't know what to call me, and it's just like Joe Diamond. I don't know. I've been called worse.
Joe Diamond.
Called worse.
Well, hey man, I gotta say it is insane to have you on the show. I was like beyond relieved when I got here and turned the computer on and everything was working great. Because
so should we tell everyone the epic that got us here?
Absolutely.
This is the third time's the charm, because last year we were booked around the same time, and then the world stopped. Didn't end it. It did not end. It just stopped. And we were like, yeah, maybe down the line. And like, it was so early in this, like when it was like, oh yeah, you know, I was going to come there and everything else. And it was like, let's hold off. You know, I don't know what's going to happen. No one knew. So we were all just being extra safe. And then we followed up and it's like, yes, let's do it. And then did your block get hit by lightning or something? Like, so the day I was supposed to be on.
The day you're supposed to be, the day I'm having a mind reader who's going to be conjuring spirits in, you know, over the Zoom and reading my mind. I'm on my way home from school that day, and I like see that there's like this pole down pretty close to my house, and I'm like, oh well, you know, whatever. Like, what could that be? And I think, or was it after? Yeah, that's what it was. There was a pole like in a different, it was like on a town in my way into my town was down, and I'm like, okay, weird. So I get home, everything's working, I'm on my computer getting everything set up, and right as it's like 5:20, I want to say 5:15, our power goes out, and I'm like, and immediately I knew, I'm like, dude, was it that pole? Now it wasn't that pole. Someone had literally crashed into the pole. Like, it is like if you took a right from my house and took another right, it is like I could throw a rock there right now. And someone, like, I don't know if it was drunk driving or what, but it was, I mean, I don't know who, but whatever. It was really sad. Apparently my my brother had known the person. They're okay. They were fine. But it just was crazy that it happened literally right before I was supposed to have you on. And so now we're back finally after almost a year. And we're here to kick it.
Yes, it's finally happened. See, it was destined. It was destined. We worked through it no matter what, and we got here. Another funny thing, so you came to see me at the Red Oak restaurant last year. You were literally like my last group that I performed for there before everything happened. Like, literally, that was like May. I can tell you, it was March 12th. I can tell you the date because this all happened on March 13th, Friday the 13th is when that was the weekend when everything just started.
I think you're right.
Closing. So, and that was the last day I was at the Red Oak. They are still in business. They're great. Go try their food. They're amazing. We're in talks about, every time I see the owners, it's like, oh yeah, we have to figure something out. We'll work something out. But again, like, trying to make sure everything's safe and workable and all that stuff. But like, they're still open. Go check them out. They're awesome if you're in the southern Wisconsin area.
Yeah, that was
But yeah,
crazy
but
when we
like,
got to see
so
you.
that was another connection. Like you were like you and your friends were like the last group I performed for in that restaurant
Yeah, that was like the last
before.
time I went out before everything.
Yeah.
So that's kind
Yeah.
of
Right.
crazy. That is just insane.
So yeah, so it's all like the Matrix. It's all interconnected. We're all here.
It was meant to be. That's what it was.
Yes.
I
Yes.
also want to say before we get going, congratulations, because with all the craziness that was last year, you tied the knot. If I remember
Yes, my
correctly.
wife and I got married on Friday the 13th.
Wow.
It turns out if you want to get married during a pandemic on Friday the 13th and want to have less than 10 people, the Grand Geneva will give you a deal.
Wow.
It's pretty great. Yeah. Fun fact about my wedding ring. It is because everyone's like, oh, why don't you have a diamond stone in your ring? Well, the whole ring, it has a silver inlay. People want to watch this back on the YouTube playback. They can. I know this won't be great for your audio listeners, but it is made of something called Elysium. It is 100% black diamond with a silver inlay. So literally the whole ring is a diamond ring.
Holy cow.
And apparently it's the strongest substance on earth. I've tried it like Captain America shield and thrown it. It doesn't come back.
That's what I was going to say.
Still, it's still awesome. It's still cool. I'm glad she picked it out for me. She puts up with all this weirdness, and she's the normal in my paranormal life, and I appreciate that. So thank you for pointing that out. I appreciate. Yeah, it was a weird timing thing, but we can talk about this now. But 3 weeks before we tied the knot, we actually tested positive for COVID.
That's crazy.
So we isolated. The whole reason we were getting married was so that our 3 elderly grandparents could see us. We got the okay that we weren't contagious beforehand and everything. We isolated for an extra like 6 days after our isolate until date, and everyone at the wedding was masked and socially distanced and everything. We took all the precautions, but man, we were just like, this is our luck. This is we set it all up, and then we both got it. So luckily our symptoms were mild, and we were, neither of us had to go to the hospital or anything, but like, yeah, it was still a very just a weird year. 2020 was crazy. So weird. Like it's and just shifting from, and I know we'll probably get into shifting from in-person shows for me to doing shows exclusively online through Zoom and all these different company events. If you had told me again this time last year that this would not only be my main source of income, but I would be able to perform for people all over the world in real time because of it, I would have been like, you're crazy. No way this will work. No way. And it does.
It works. It works. I can attest to that.
Yeah. So yeah, you saw the show this last week, and it was great to have you in the audience and to be a part of it. Yeah.
It was fantastic. I've been talking it up ever since a couple days ago when it happened. Also, on the note of getting married, how does someone tie down a magician? What does it take to tie down a magician?
What is it? What she have to do to trap me?
How do we get magicians to tie the knot with us?
I want to be very careful because I am still very, very good friends with some people that I have dated. So I want to be very, very careful about how I say this. But they will.
Joe.
Well, some of them I think love Lindsay even more than me in some ways. But a big part of it is, so I can actually explain this because I'm not talking with this person anymore. But one of my high school girlfriends, one of my first girlfriends, we were in a fight, and what ended the fight and basically ended the relationship was she said, well, you're the mind reader. You should just know. Like that was literally told. And that's when I realized like, oh, maybe this isn't a great thing. And the great thing with Lindsay is like, we definitely have rapport and know how the other person's going to think, but I really can't read her in a lot of ways I do with other people. Like I know what she might say or prefer and that kind of stuff, but I'm still at a loss of what to get her for her birthday each year. She still surprises me.
Wow.
Still, she's super supportive. She's actually fun shout out to Lindsay. She in the last few years has actually become, obviously my life partner, but also creative partner. She's the unofficial director for my last live show that I put together called Mystic, which ran at the Dole Mansion and will run after the pandemic. And she's also the director for my online show. She really helped me write the scripts, because she doesn't care about how any of this stuff works. She just cares about does the show flow? Does it make sense? Does it go somewhere? Is the story engaging? She cares about all those things.
Which
Whereas
is
a
important to
lot of
have
the people,
someone do that, you know, come in
yes,
with a fresh
yes,
set of eyes.
yes. And a lot of the people I did date, not all of them, but particularly that first one, just thought, oh, if I date a mind reader, he'll know me better than me and it won't take work. And the short answer is no, it actually takes more work in some ways, because you're dealing with someone who's in this line of work. And I'm sure you can relate to with this. Just being in show business at any level is very weird. Because when we first started dating, it was the year after I had driven a car blindfolded on the Woodstock Square in Woodstock, Illinois. Where
I'm going to ask you about that later. I'm going to ask you about that later.
Awesome.
So.
And so to do that, I had to go to all these like chamber meetings and talk with the mayor and chief of police. So like that town still, I go into any of those shops anywhere and people go, oh, hey, Joe Diamond. And Lindsay referenced the comedian John Mulaney. He has a joke about this. And she was like, one day we were just out and about. And we had gone in 3 shops and I had to have 3 separate conversations with people. And we left and she was just like, yeah, being with you is like being with someone running for the mayor of nothing. Like it's kind of like a lot of handshaking, a lot of baby kissing, a lot of all this stuff. And that's part of the reason why we don't live in that area. I mean, it was also to be closer for her work, but it has been nice in the last few years, not to be like, oh, I couldn't go to Starbucks and not
the paparazzi was on you. Oh no,
it was not that at all. But it is nice to know I can go to my local Starbucks near where I live. I live in the Pleasant Prairie area now. But if I go to a coffee shop in like Crystal Lake or Woodstock, I know like, hey, I'm probably gonna have to talk to people. And you know, as a creative, sometimes you don't want to be bothered. So like it's good to have those places where I can go and just not be bothered and be with my own thoughts and work and read and all that stuff. But at the same time, it is fun to go out and like see who I'm going to run into. So I kind of have it set on like a tap where I can at least pre-pandemic
turn it on and off.
Yeah, I could go out and like I was like, okay, I got to work on something. Well, I don't want to be bothered, so I'm gonna go here. But if I needed to like road test something, I would be like, oh, if I sit in a Crystal Lake coffee shop, I can just wait until someone asks me like, hey, are you that guy from the radio or Will Rock or this or that? And then I can try it. And then I'm not trying it in front of a paying audience. So that was kind of fun too. It was nice to have that flexibility. And also it helped not getting blindsided with it. Cause I would have to go from, and again, like I'm not one of those performers. Like I'm very much who I am. I'm me, who you see, you know, we've chatted when I've, in my virtual shows in real life now, this is who I am. That said, there is with a lot of performers, like when you see someone who is an audience member or a client or something like that, we all have shifts and modes. You definitely talk to your boss differently than you talk to, you know, your significant other, of course. Mm-hmm. So there is, and when you run into a coworker or something, there is a shift in that, you know? And so there is, and I think that's a better way of saying it than like running into fans or something. It's like running into coworkers or something. There has to be that slight shift. Yeah. And there's also the worst part is I have a terrible memory. I often joke, like I have to get rid of my own thoughts to make room for other people's. But as a result, like people will be like, oh, hey, Joe, or hey, Joe Diamond. And I'll be like, I don't know who you are. But I have the sense of a graduation party from 2014. 2015. Okay, there we go. Okay,
close
like
enough.
That's the best I'll get.
Yeah, I can imagine. You know, I especially with. I mean, we'll get to the driving the car blindfolded thing later.
Well, yeah. Well, let's dive in.
But I want to. That I can imagine. Yeah, you definitely running in with a lot of people that recognize you from that and whatnot. But you know, I introduced you as a lot of different things, and I was curious as to what you would introduce yourself as, or what you would if someone asked you, because people are asking me about you and I'm like, well, he reads minds, but he does this and he does, and I'm
that's
like,
one of the benefits of being beyond the benefits and downsides of being beyond description. So let me I'm going to give you the long answer and the short answer.
Sweet.
Because the long answer will lead into the short answer, because I think it's one of the areas, and you'll understand this, and I think your audience will too. For me, it's where art and commerce both clash and roll together very well. And I think there's this outdated feeling of, what's your section in the phone book? Are you a plumber? Are you an electrician? Are you a magician? Are you a psychic? Like you had to have like these labels and these boxes you had to be in,
yes,
you know? Yeah. And I think the world is changing in a lot of positive ways. And I think one of the biggest positives is that we're not defined by one thing anymore. Like, you do music, you also have this podcast, you also do other things. I did a radio show for a number of years. I've done corporate events, I've done theater shows, and I've done card readings. And so I've had a lot of various experiences and a lot of different places where I am different things to different people. My opening line for the show is I say, some call me a mind reader, some call me a psychic or a magician. I'm not a medium, I'm a large. That's a fun little joke to establish myself. And I like that I'm not, because part of what I want to do, part of what I think good art in general does, but especially what mine does and what I'm shooting for, is to break down labels. I feel like we try to contain things by putting a label around it. A label such as paranormal or psychic or magic. And when I have people say, like, because I've had people say to me, like, well, you're not really a magician. This isn't really like magic. And what they mean is, I'm not pulling rabbits out of a hat, and they don't have any other word or frame for it. The best way to describe it, at least in showbiz terms, is yes, I would be considered, if we were going to go with like that classic phone book analogy in show business, I would be considered a cross between magician, mentalist, psychic entertainer. I do some hypnosis, but I'm not like a hypnotist. That's another thing we could get into. So if we were going to look at like the genre, if I were a musician, the genre I would be is something that's known as mentalism. There's also a genre called bizarre magic, which is like strange and unusual magic tied in with ghosts and the paranormal and all this stuff. Early David Blaine would have been considered in that vein a little bit.
That's what I was going to
ask
you.
A lot of mentalism and mind reading. But then you've got people now who do, hidden camera shows like Michael Carbonaro. You've got people in the UK who do a blend of psychology and mentalism and magic, like Darren Brown. There's a wide range, and people know that now because of the internet and all these things. So again, using the musician analogy, imagine if the only form of music people saw was pop music. That's just a simple example right now. Like, all people saw were Katy Perry, Britney Spears. They had no concept of indie, rap, country. They had no concept of any of that stuff. Yeah, there would be some people who would be stuck going to only Katy Perry concerts. And sure, a lot of people would love it, but a lot of people would be like, yeah, music's not really my thing.
Yeah.
And when people think of, and speaking of Lake Geneva, where we've met, and I've done work with this person in Lake Geneva, there's Tristan Christ, who has the Tristan Christ Magic Theater. He's known as an illusionist. These are the people, the men and women who cut people in half and make motorcycles and helicopters appear and disappear and all this. Those big props are called illusions in our industry. I would be considered, again, a mentalist, mind reader. So again, using the magic analogy, there's the pop stars, like, again, Katy Perry's. Imagine if you then suddenly saw a singer-songwriter like Bob Dylan. Like, if you said, let's go to a concert, if you went expecting Katy Perry and you got Bob Dylan, nothing against Bob Dylan, but you'd be extra blown away, like, wow, this is no bells and whistles. It's just unplugged, and it's just him, and he's telling his story. And it's not about the spectacle. And there are some people who would watch Bob Dylan and go, this is boring. I want to see Katy Perry change costumes a million times and pyrotechnics. And again, those are both valid. That's why there's a variety of genres and so forth. And in the last few years, the magical arts, the mystery arts, again, magic, mind reading, hypnosis, they've all been lumped into the same thing. Everyone's either seen it on TV or a cheesy kids performer. And I think because of, again, TV shows, America's Got Talent, all that stuff, again, TV shows like The Mentalist and all this stuff has really helped people understand that there are different genres of mystery performance, of magical entertainment. As a result of that, I've kind of purposefully just gone by Joe Diamond. I've purposely kind of just branded myself as me.
I like that.
If people do have to like introduce me, I'll usually just stick with mind reading. Like when I do corporate shows, I almost only stick to mind reading and some dream interpretation, because in those situations we can't get into tarot and ghosts and all this other stuff that I can get into in my ticketed Zoom show. We cover a lot of territory. I use tarot cards, pendulums. We talk about ghosts, lie detecting, a lot of different themes, a lot of weird themes that I can't normally get into in like a corporate situation. So for that, I specialize a little bit more. But again, I'm doing 13-person shows in a haunted mansion. I've done walk around stuff at like the Dole Mansion, the Dole and the Maxwell Mansion, both of which are reportedly haunted. So I like that I've kind of got like a weird nebulous, people don't really know what to call me. So again, the San Francisco Examiner called me an occult aficionado, which I love because occult means secret or hidden, and aficionado means expert or knower. So it literally means secret knower, which is kind of cool. And it looks kind of neat on a business card. But again, I've done radio. I've done so many things. I kind of like that I've just, for lack of a better term, branded myself as Joe Diamond. All that said, I finally overcame a creative wall, which everyone says you should have, which is your elevator pitch. What's your 30-second way you pitch yourself at like cocktail party? Because even my wife has had trouble like, oh, what does your husband do, or fiance for the years we were
oh, I'm sure,
just engaged, like, well, he does magic, but he does mind reading, but he doesn't do like, he's not really a psychic, but he's not really a magician either. Like, it finally just came out one day when I was describing to my dentist, and it was, I'm a kind of magician. I do mind reading shows for corporate and private events where instead of pulling rabbits out of hats on stage, I pull people's thoughts out of their minds.
Oh, I like that.
And that's kind of like just the quick elevator pitch. What do you do for a living? Keep the conversation going. Because either the conversation is going to keep going around the table, or they're going to ask, let's see something. Let's see you do something, which happens a lot already. And even in the virtual show, as you saw, I was like, rather than explain what it is I do, I think it's easier if I just show you and I go into something. And that's usually what I would do, again, in person or at events. When walking around, like at the Maxwell, one of my favorite opening lines was, I would say, I'm part of the entertainment, you're the other part. You get to decide what we do. We can do a card trick. We can try some mind reading, or I can just share with you an unusual fact. And the unusual fact was kind of a get out of jail free card for people who didn't want to get into that stuff. Mm-hmm. That said, when you're in a cool location like that, people are asking, is it haunted? And usually in a place like that, word spread. Like people very often would just say, hey, are you the mind reader guy? And I would come over and just do something. So that's kind of my way of getting into it. I kind of like that I don't have a box other than my name, Joe Diamond. To put in, because I could do, for an April Fool's prank, I said a friend of mine and I did a band. She's a paranormal artist. Her name's Varla Ventura. We put together a fake band called Ghost Strawberries, and we did some Instagram artwork of our albums and such. And all the links took it to, hey, April Fools, there's no music, be a part of it. But the fact that people were like, oh yeah, I could see Joe Diamond doing like a weird kind of experimental.
I seriously was gonna try. I was gonna check it out, man. Me and my girlfriend were like, dude, wait, Joe does music? Are you kidding me? We gotta. And then
I'll sing to myself, and I've been told I've got decent-ish pitch, but like I don't think I could. In high school, I got the lead of Ebenezer Scrooge in A Christmas Carol, and that was the one part that didn't have any singing. So I took that as a sign. Maybe I shouldn't sing, but I sing in the shower. You can ask Lindsay. I've always got my headphones in, and I'm dancing around and jamming out.
Yeah.
But again, the fact that it made sense. Like if I did that, if I put out
I think it just makes
a coffee table book or something, it would make sense.
Yeah.
Then I wouldn't go, wait, he doesn't do that kind of thing. It's still in the same realm and vein. I've done ghost tours. It makes perfect sense for me to do a ghost tour as it does for me to do,
Well, I think what you said, kind of
tell fortunes.
I think your analogy was actually spot on with the Bob Dylan and Katy Perry thing. How it and like
not saying I'm Bob Dylan. I'm not saying that.
I get what you're saying though, and I get that. People's expectation. If everybody only thinks that magicians in the musical sense it's just what you hear on the radio. Like they might not.
Yeah. Top 40.
Like they might not be.
And there's a place for that. There's definitely a place for top 40. There's a place for experimental. There's a place for comedy music. one of my career, I have two like major career role models that I really look at. And there's a variety of them, both past, present, from history and alive currently. But one person I really look at a lot is Jack Black. Like he can do Tenacious D.
We just
he can do a kids movie.
Yeah.
He can do a serious role like he did in King Kong in a Peter Jackson movie. He's Jack Black. He can do all those things, and it makes perfect sense. He can dance around in a Speedo on Instagram, and we're like, yeah, that tracks, and it doesn't damage his career or anything. So it's like, yeah, that's a Jack Black thing to do. Where like some people, if they dance around in a Speedo, it might not make sense. I'm not saying it would damage their career.
Yeah.
But like, you know, or do an album like Tenacious D's albums and like, wait, this is that guy from that Gulliver's Travels movie. Like it makes perfect sense because it all comes from him. And I like, and again, I think he's a beast of talent, like of all sorts of things.
Love him or hate him. It's authenticity.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is, and I think that's what you like. It almost like exudes from you personally.
Yeah, I heard. So Darren Brown, that British mentalist I told you about, which look his stuff up. He's amazing. It's all over YouTube and Netflix. But he said something in an interview this last year where he said, it's amazing how many performers, just talking about stand-up comedians, magicians, a lot of them. But he said, it's amazing how many performers are actively trying to be the least likable versions of themselves. And that's, and to me, that's like, yeah, that just gets in the way. Like, no, be the most likable version of yourself. The more authentic you are, the more that will be the most likable version of yourself.
There's only one of you. There's only one you.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, exactly.
When you try to be like other people,
exactly. I definitely have influences. I mean, you saw my show. I'm sure there was like a couple Jack Black type jokes in there. There's a couple. If you look at other performers, some of my mentors, there's influences from them. I don't want to imitate them, but I don't want them to be gone completely either. So it's okay to have. It's like the old analogy. If you steal from one person, it's plagiarism. But if you steal from multiple places, it's research. And I see that a lot in artistry. Ice-T did an interview with Mark Maron this summer, and he talked about how he used like some rock and roll riffs in some of his early rap songs, like directly from, and he said, I think it was Van Halen or AC/DC. He ran into one of those artists like, hey, you got a little bit of our song in there. He's like, yeah. Like, yeah, we stole that from this person and combined it with this. So it was funny how like obviously they didn't rip off someone. There's a difference between,
sampling,
there's the books,
influences.
Yeah, sampling. And yeah, of course, we don't have to get into that. Don't take another person's art verbatim.
I think what you're saying though about like genre blending is super rampant in what I do with music and everything. I mean, even with podcasts, dude. Podcasts. I mean, there's very much very niche podcasts, as there are very like people that are a rock artist through and through. But there are, I mean, you have songs that are top 40 now that will be hip hop trap records with an electric guitar riff on the top. Yeah. And there are podcasts like a Joe Rogan or somebody like him who will, or I'm trying to think of some comedy podcast, or even like H3 podcast is one of my favorites. Like these people will have people from all different walks of life and talk about anything,
Exactly.
So it's crazy.
Yep. Yeah. So I just see it from that standpoint. Like the other things you have noticed, the weirder things I do, that's the thing people like the most. Like just when I think like, oh, this is going to be too much for people. Yeah. Like that's the thing. Like I thought when I started a 13-person show in a haunted mansion, this would be my niche once a month artistic outlet while I made money from corporate. And like the last year before the pandemic, that was the majority of my income, and all the corporate was gravy, was just the cherry on top. And I was just like, oh, this is so weird. It was just so crazy. Like, I didn't think like the weird 13-person haunted mansion show would be like embraced by like the Crystal Lake area in the way that it was. And I think it was just part of that. Like I was able to be more, authentically myself. I mean, we all have layers. We all have, I like to use the term filters or veils. Like, yeah, if you have like 18 veils in a row, you're not gonna be able to see much. But if you have 3 or 4, that's going to shade you differently. We all have those, or like those old timey like steampunk glasses, like from National Treasure, where like the 3 come in and those kinds of things. Like I think we have, again, those filters we go through. Again, we've got the filter for when we're at work, filter when we're with our grandma. It's all still us, but we're just dialing up and insert up and down in certain situations and with certain people.
I think you're
I think that's just
absolutely
being
right.
tactful and being a human being.
Yeah, I mean there are subtleties, you know. I mean, I think they put it best in Shrek, where people, you know, ogres have layers, people have layers too, um,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
I think that's like the truest sense of the word. But I also, you know, we're gonna get into I'll tease this now while we've got some people in
Okay.
the live chat. And we'll say what's up to them. We got Duncan says
Yeah.
let's go. Sid the magician, Joe, he's here for Joe.
Yes, Sid. Sid's awesome.
Shout out to
Sid's
Sid.
awesome.
Shout out Deborah Freeman says hello everyone, and then we got Southeast Wisconsin Preps report. Well, I will check in with you guys. It looks like
Yeah, that
I will
looks
check
awesome.
in with you guys soon. But you know, I just want to let you guys know who are listening right now live as well. If you're listening the day after, you're watching this now, day after, or whenever you're listening or watching. Joe is gonna probably be doing a couple of mind reading stunts, if you
Yeah,
will,
yeah.
towards
We
the
can.
end. So if you guys want to continue listening, make
Yeah.
sure we'll get to that in a little bit. But I want to know. I was listening to you on the Deceive Reality podcast, Joe.
Oh, cool.
Shout out to them.
Yeah.
And you mentioned over there that your intro into magic, like how you got started, was
Mm-hmm.
different and probably, and you know, not the traditional
Yeah.
route that a magician or
Mm-hmm.
someone who does what you do in the mystic arts normally would. So if you want to, could
Yeah.
you explain and elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah. So normally, the way most people in the mystery and mystic arts, whether they're a magician, a hypnotist, you know, mentalist, mind reader, psychic entertainer, uh, it's a very similar. We can get into other similarities in a moment, but it's usually got a book or got like maybe a magic set for a gift, and maybe you know they saw a performer on TV, and those were definitely part of my story for sure. But I was really into. I was a Ghostbuster for Halloween, which was like late or early 90s, which was like a full decade after the Ghostbusters boom. So they were
Mm-hmm.
already kind of not a big thing. Like they were still a big thing, but like it wasn't a thing that all the kids my age were into at the time. It's
Yeah.
kind of like a thing their older brothers and sisters were into. And I listened to radio dramas. I mean, I heard about the story of Orson Welles, and I made my own fake radio broadcast and
Wow.
recorded it on a cassette and like played it in the living room to see if I could freak out the other kids that my mom would daycare for. Did make one of them cry.
That's a success then,
and
in a way.
yeah, that was a success. And I loved like reading ghost stories and watching scary movies. I always turned them off, but like that was the point for me, you know. I wanted to watch. Even today, I'll watch movies like this, like just covering my eyes, like is it?
No
Like
way.
squinting
So
my eyes.
Joe Diamond is nervous and scared.
Oh, totally. Well, to me,
Wow.
that's the point. That's the point.
You're right.
You know,
You're right. I just wouldn't expect you to.
I want to be scared. I want to be like, oh, well, what's happening? So I love that aspect. I mean, don't get me wrong. I still love a good slasher movie where it's like, okay, I'm not watching this to be scared. I'm just watching to see how creative this can be and how much carnage there can be. There's definitely a place for that. But like the real like, oh God, what's going to happen? You know, that suspense and everything. And again, I didn't consciously put this together until much, much later. But like I've always felt like the stuff I was reading in like the magic books and magic kits were a way to make all of that real in a sense. Like, oh, I could learn how to give people that same feeling that these movies and books and stories are giving, but like in real time. Like I love The Invisible Man. I love time travel. I wrote a whole story or a whole show about time travel that has like a narrative and everything. And it was in that studio, at the Dole Mansion for 13 people. Wow. And like, again, I really look at my performances as like a real life, almost like I see myself almost like a one-man escape room. Not that people like need to get away from me, but in the sense of like, okay, here's the premise. We're going to a historic haunted mansion and there's going to be a mind reader there, whether again, it's at the Maxwell, at the Dole, whatever. That's a setup for a Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah.
That's a setup for Alfred Hitchcock Presents or one of those like horror anthology shows. Like that feels like the setup. What's going to happen? How much of this can I make people feel like they're in their own little Twilight Zone episode? Like that's very much, again, my as much as I liked pranking people, doing tricks, doing stuff for real. I remember when I first learned like skills like hammering a nail in my nose and sticking my hand in an animal trap. Those aren't tricks. Those are genuine stunts that sideshow performers taught me. There's no deception. The nail doesn't collapse and everything. But it was funny even then, and especially with some of the mind reading stuff where people were like, the stuff that wasn't a trick, people still tried to explain as a trick. And I thought that was kind of fun, like blurring the lines, kind of like those old school wrestling shows where it's like, okay, I know they're probably not really arguing, but I don't think you can get a blood capsule to come out of the middle of your head. Maybe he really did injure himself. So some of this is real, some of this isn't. I don't know where to put the marker. And I really got a jolt from giving that feeling of, again, of mystery of what if this is real, what if this isn't. And again, to me, that's part of the experience and part of what drew me to the art form in a sense.
That makes sense. That I can definitely see that influence in the way you do it. And I think that you kind of nailed it spot on by saying it, giving someone their own personal Twilight Zone experience. And I don't want to give away necessarily the trick or anything, but I know it was maybe I think it might have been like the first or second time that you had done a trick that I actually got to like witness like firsthand. And I just remember we were basically you had like teleported an item to a different location at the place that we were at, and I had to go inside and retrieve it.
Yeah, at the Maxwell.
And I just remember being like for people that don't understand, this is not going to do it justice, but basically, I don't want to spoil the whole trick, but we're outside.
No, go for it. I'll be honest, I don't do that very often. I only do that in special occasions. So tell it, you're not spoiling anything.
Basically, we're outside at a satellite bar for it was a bigger event that we had going on at this mansion, and it had slowed down a bit, and we're at this outside satellite bar. And there's a ballroom in the mansion that I can see. There's a window not too far away from us, but it's it's the building's here. We're like 5-6 feet outside on like the porch behind a bar. And Joe's doing this trick for a guest that was there who was close with a lot of the workers, and we're watching him do this. And basically, I don't remember the entire trick, but basically you had not only like picked the card that the guy had chosen, like as in guessed his card correctly, you had also, because he had torn it, or you torn it. I don't remember who tore it.
He tore the corner off and put it in my hand. Yeah.
And when we found the card, the corner was missing, and then you said, go check the window right there. Go inside. And I remember I turned around, and in the window is the little piece of the card that is missing, and it's inside of the of the building. And I was just like, and that was,
you had to go all the way around.
I went in and got
card
it
to make sure it matched and was the same piece. Yeah, exactly.
I was blown away.
Well, yeah, thank you. It means the world that you told that. And the other thing too is like, I did that then because normally I'm there at night, and sending people outside after they've been drinking and everything is not feasible. So the fact that I was able to like send someone inside while it was daytime out and everything, I was like, and I wasn't planning on doing that, but he had seen me do a couple things. And that guy, from what I remember, was a little skeptical. Like I knew I had to pull out a big gun for him. You know, I knew I had to do something that was like, and again, like starts off, and that's why I like it. Start off with mind reading. Okay, maybe he read my facial expressions. Maybe he saw the card. Okay, now I'm tearing a card. This is weird. Now he put it in my hand. That's weird. And now I open my hand and it's gone. Okay, that's kind of like a magic trick. But now he turns around and now the piece is on the other side of the glass in the window. The fact that, again, it goes through that, like I said, that progression of, okay, he's doing this. And again, like, because I've started off with the mind reading, which is a very ephemeral, non-physical thing. Now when I move on to the moving the physical thing, it's more impressive, but also has more of that feeling of again, like that Twilight Zone,
like
where
I'm
it's like
here, I'm in the show. Like it is.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. It's not just happening here, it can happen anywhere and all this other stuff. And again, I like giving that mystery, that blending of the unknown. Because there's some stuff I do that's very direct, straight ahead mind reading, and there's some stuff where it's like, I don't know what the heck to call that. And I don't know what to call that. I'm okay with and I'm okay with causing that too. So
that was, yeah, for me that was like one of when I ended up bringing my friends to come see you. That was the one I had to keep trying to explain to them. I'm like, guys, you don't understand. We have to go see him. I
yeah.
literally can't tell you. I can't do it justice. So you guys definitely have
Well,
to
and I
check
think
out
that's
Kevin.
why I've become so known for the mind reading, because all the
Mm,
other stuff I do that isn't technically mind reading is so bizarre. You do kind of have to see it and experience it.
yeah.
The mind reading is very simple. I thought of my first kiss. He guessed it.
Yeah.
I thought of my PIN code for my phone. He guessed it and opened my phone. I think that's the stuff that's most easily explainable. And it's not easy to explain. Like, he borrowed something from me, sent it back in time to before the show, and he proved it. No, really, there were 13 of us in a room, and
Yeah.
you just gotta go see it. Like, I think that's why people just latch on to the mind reading stuff so much. And
Easier to explain. I get that.
it's easier to explain and communicate the feeling of it. Whereas, like, again, like a big part of it is you do have to be there, whether it's in the Zoom show or in person.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned I don't remember if this was on that same podcast or if this was somewhere else, but I had heard you speaking to somebody that you had started. You kind of did tricks at Six Flags was one of your
Yeah.
gigs.
My first gig was I started at Six Flags Great America. I was 17. They were trying something called Streetmosphere, which was having a bunch of entertainers all over the park. So if you saw like someone in a weird costume hula hooping or someone walking around with a giant like mayor badge or something, I was part of that program.
How do you apply for
First,
that? Where were they listing jobs for that?
this is such a weird story. My school got something sent where it was like, Six Flags looking for performers, this, that, and it said magicians on it. And I went to a very small school. I graduated out of a class of 2.
Oh
There
my
were only
God.
about 50 kids from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade. It was a religious school. So everyone knew each other. It was very small. My principal was like, hey, you should apply for this. And he actually was very cool of him. He let me call on the school's phone during lunch to set up my interview, my audition.
Oh
I made
wow.
a tape as well, just to be sure. And on that audition, I can tell you what I did. I did a piece of mind reading, and I bent some silverware for them, where I held it flat in my hand and it bent up and bent over and twisted in their hands and stuff. And again, it was so different from what they were expecting from like magic that I was hired pretty much on the spot. And so for the next 2 seasons, I got to go out on the street from noon to 7:30 with a half-hour break in between. Had a couple 5 to 10 minute breaks here and there. And it was just my job to go up to people and do anything. Like there was days where I went out and just read palms all day. There were days I went out and just did card tricks. There were days where I went out and just did mind reading. There were days I went out and just hammered a nail in my nose, pulled it out, and moved on to the next group. Like there were so many, like I could do pretty much anything.
That's
And it kind
crazy.
of, there's the phrase of, you need to get your 10,000 hours in. By the end of those 2 summers, I had gotten it. So by the time I was out of high school, I already had a pretty good sense of the type of stuff I could do and pull off, and that what I enjoyed doing and what other people enjoyed doing. So it was a great experience. There were lots of ups and downs. We could fill a whole podcast of me telling stories of
Yeah.
those days. But because
Well,
people would just run away. It would get crazy sometimes. That's the other thing. You're going up to people. Sometimes I'm going up to a group of like 8 goth kids. Sometimes I'm going up to some parents who are waiting for their kids to come off a ride. Like it was always different. Like normally at like a corporate event, everyone's there in their suits and they're on their best behaviors and they're drinking and ha ha ha. And then there's times where you're like, this was just all over the place. You didn't know what you were going to get every single day. And so that was a really good experience. And I really enjoyed it. Because again, I got to try just about anything. And if it didn't work, it didn't matter. There were endless people to play with.
I was gonna say, what direction, if any, did they give you? Were they like, try and stay away from this?
Today you're in front. Today you're in front of the Batman ride. Today you're over by the American Eagle. Today, from noon to 3, you're by Batman, and then from 4 till 3:30 or 7:30, you're at the entrance exit. You're at the carousel. And this isn't how Six Flags Great America is now, because like there's like a whole kiddie area under the big tent in front of the American Eagle. You used to have to go through that tent area to get on and off the Eagle. And that was like a food court area. So there were lots of tables and lots of people just kind of hanging out. So that was one of my favorite spots to be. And usually, especially at the end of the day, because those were people who were hanging out till the end. Like it was kind of hard to like because people who are towards the beginning or at the exit or entrance at the end of the day, they were usually pretty tired and they were getting ready to go. So it was slightly harder, but again, it was I wouldn't have traded that for anything else in the world. It was a great 2 seasons.
I'm sure you were killing it like Freak Fest.
I only did one Fright Fest.
Oh,
I only
Fright
did
Fest, that's what it's
one
called.
Fright Fest. Just the second year didn't work out with college and everything. It was fine, but I did one Fright Fest. I don't have it here. It's stashed away in the attic at my grandparents or at my parents. Sorry, and my wife knows about this. Here's the other thing, not to brag, because I was anything but a ladies' man. However, I have like a whole box filled of like playing cards with the different girls. Like, this is how old school it was. It was 2005. All like their emails, like their Hotmails and their AOLs on them. Cause like that I found was like easier to get than like a phone number. And like, I would go on so many dates there. Like, hey, you want to come back? I can get us into the park for free. And like, yeah. And I was going out on dates once or twice a week. It's junior and senior year. Yeah. So I was 17 going into my senior year. And then after my graduation year, was the 2 summers I worked there. So like, yeah, those 2 summers, that's when I finally got comfortable dating. I was such an awkward panda. I still am in many ways. If you ever meet Lindsay, ask her to talk about the horrific first date we had. I was not on my A game at all. I'm glad she gave me a second chance for our second date. But yeah, it was, yeah. So, but it was even worse back then. It was even worse back then. But yeah, but it was just kind of funny. Like every once in a while I'll be like, oh, and I'll open up and it'll just be a bunch of cards with like cool, KEWLGURL, cool girl 6859 at hotmail.com, like little hearts drawn on it.
Killing
It was
back in the day.
Yeah, with all those Hotmail addresses. Yeah, exactly.
MySpace accounts and whatnot.
Oh, I was huge on MySpace. I had that was the other thing. That was like the first social media. Yeah. And that was like the first summer. And so I would just tell people to find me on MySpace afterwards. I got close to like 80,000 MySpace friends.
Holy shit.
From those 2. I still don't have that many people on social media now.
That's insane.
Like I'm nowhere near as MySpace famous. I'm nowhere near as famous as I am now as I ever was on MySpace. Like it was crazy. And like the other thing with MySpace, people forget with social media, it wasn't on our phones. I had to like go home and like
boot up
accept
the computer,
and post. Yeah, boot up, transfer the photos from the digital camera onto the computer, then onto MySpace. Like it was a thing. Yeah. And so it was it was rough. But yeah, but because of that, I was on the street endlessly every day. I just would have like, tons of people. Oh, you're on MySpace? Yeah, look up Joe Diamond. They'd write it down. Again, we forget like this was all in the days of flip phones. Yeah, so it was crazy then, but yeah, it was a lot of fun.
So when you're like 17, 18, doing this at Six Flags, and then you're getting ready to go to college, and you decide you're not going to go back to do it at Six Flags and whatnot, what were you considering going to college for? I know you had mentioned you were given some credit in one of the other podcasts I had listened to you on to Jay, I think his name is Jay Sankey, as one of your mentors, and I was curious as to like how does what is like for a basketball player, right? A kid who wants to be like a professional athlete. Because I consider like it's a different form of entertainment, obviously, but like, there's a set course of action. Or if you want to become a nurse, like there's steps that you do, right? For a career where it's like, you want to be a basketball player, you got to do good in grade school, you're going to play varsity on your high school team, then you're going to go play at a good college, then you can maybe go pro somewhere, maybe make the NBA eventually down the line. What does that look like, that same like structure, if you will, for like a magician? Are you thinking like as the 17, 18 going to college, is that what you want to go to school for? Is like, is there a school?
So full disclosure, I only did 1 year of college.
Okay.
My family, I was able to get my first year. I was able to get the first year of school paid for, but my family just, long story short, I could have figured out something with like to make the finances work for the second year. And I just decided, you know what? No, I'm just going to go into this, full time. And I was originally very embarrassed by that. Like, I don't even think, I think my wife and I, we were dating for like a month. Because I always would say, like, oh, I studied this and this in college, but I wouldn't say I didn't graduate if it came up in conversation. And it's still something I am a little bit, I'll be honest, embarrassed by. I did a ton of reading, though. Like, I still read tons of books on marketing. Like, in many ways, I've never left college. The other thing, too, I'm going to answer. This is going to be my roundabout way of getting out of your question.
That's fair.
But I hope it'll still make sense and be honest. But in many ways, I've never left college, but also my school, again, it was a very small school. We had no teachers. It was a religious school. We literally read in one book and wrote in the other. And it was not a very happy experience. It was very small. Again, it was religious, so there was a lot of stuff going back and forth about whether I should or shouldn't do magic for a living, or even at all. I mean, that was kind of part of it too. The more I was told, oh, you shouldn't do that, the devil can use it as an in, that just made me want to do it more, rock and roll. But like, I mean, come on. And so college was better because I got to actually study what I wanted. I got to study theater. I got to actually ask teachers questions that I was kind of, because before, when I got stumped on math, my principal before that was a youth pastor, and before that drove the bus for the church. So like, he didn't know anything about the math book I was looking at. He had to call up a couple parents, ask who were good at math. They had to come in and they had to try to explain it to me, and they didn't have the education. And like, the book is now, I'm behind 2 weeks because I'm waiting for all this. Anyway.
Yeah. That's
so I'll also say this. I've said this in a couple of places. I'll say it here. I'm not sure, that school is now defunct. I'm not sure how valid my high school diploma even is. Because there was a lot of, I won't say the name of the school, but like, there were a lot of things I look back on that just don't make sense. Not saying anything shady was going on. I don't want to say that. I don't want to say anything disparaging. But at the same time, part of me is just like, how did that work? How is this okay? How did this give me credit for others? I don't understand. So I think I was kind of disillusioned with the whole education system. The other thing too is I went there from first grade to 12th grade.
Yeah.
So like at 8th grade, all my friends were like, oh, you're going to come with us to high school now, right? I was like, nope, I'm still going there. So I never really got the full high school experience. It was very odd. I mean, here's my damage. I've talked with my parents a lot about it. They did what they thought was best.
Yeah.
I don't think it was. I don't blame them, but I do think it was a mistake, if that makes any kind of sense. So that, all that said, again, opposite ends of the spectrum, my wife was valedictorian and has a double major from college in history and biology, and she works in finances. So she is super smart. She's book smart and I'm street smart. That's the way it goes. But I read a ton of books. I've read, like, I'm still very much, you know, I'm a small business owner. I'm an independent artist. I'm a marketer. I copyright. I write my press releases. There's a lot of things I don't do on my own. Like, I don't design my website. I don't, I can update it, you know, using the template and everything. But like,
well, you know, I was going to say, Joe, I don't think you should be, at all. I mean, and this is obviously, you know, for you to figure out, but I don't think you should be ashamed at all for not, you know, finishing college in any way, especially.
Oh yeah, it's not so.
To like finances and whatnot, especially like, I mean, you have done, and with what you have done with your life and what you have like proven as just an entertainer, I think it's something that I very much admire and you know, and think is super cool. And I think, you know, I think it goes to show, and maybe it's college was something that you did, you know, maybe like care about.
Yeah,
but I think that
Lindsay and I have talked about me going back. We have talked about me going back. But also, so I'm going to finish this off with this. I now run a youth program for young magicians. It's at Magi Fest, which is the world's longest running yearly gathering of magicians and mentalists and mind readers from all over the world. It's in Columbus, Ohio each year, and I'm in charge of their youth program. So I have to say this now. Still do it. I'm not a role model when it comes to these things.
Yeah.
If you have the opportunity to go, because I think whether you do it or whether you go into this as a career or not, like you have the life experience. I still have a lot. Well, here's the other thing too. Let me just, again, full disclosure on all that. I didn't do college. I was, worked for a couple of years, and at age 20, I moved into my first apartment. That was in 2000, and I turned 21 in 2008. That was when all that happened. Then the 2009 recession happened.
Yeah.
I was an independent artist, small business owner, self-employed during one of the worst economic recessions in existence. That's when I started. So again, I mean, I'll say it here too. I've said this other places. I did end up losing my apartment after 3 years. I couldn't make the rent anymore. I ended up owing a bunch. I paid it all off, but I had to basically get served and move out. And it's not a proud thing of mine. It happened. It's still life experience I've got to learn from. Again, that's when I say that was my college. But at the same time, I think go again. What I say to the youth is, if there's anything you love besides this, do that. Do that. If you love being one of my best friends, who's also a performer, is a full-time lawyer and a part-time performer. And he's great. And he incorporates a lot of what he does into his work. And he's able to build stuff for people. I own some props that he built. He writes scripts for other performers. He does his own stuff. He gets to tour. He was a partner in his firm, and now he does a lot of consulting work. And he basically makes his own hours, all that stuff. And he gets to do this. And that's awesome. There's another lawyer who that's his day job, but he creates, for the last 50 years, him and a friend have met at a Chicago deli every Saturday and have invented card tricks together. And they've put out books. They're considered luminaries in our field, and they've never done a professional show. Their names have never been lights, but they invent stuff for people like me to look at and go, oh, I can take this, adapt it with my own story and personality, and put it into something like this. So again, just like in music, there's songwriters, and there's the people who sing the songs, and there's the singer-songwriters, there's choreographers, there's lots of different avenues than just being than just being the single person on stage with a microphone. There's so many. There's background singers, there's drummers, there's all this other stuff. So whatever allows you to do that, do it, and it's okay. It's okay to not have your passion be your main source of income. And that was what was really hard at that point. I had to find other hobbies and passions that weren't tied to my career, because when I had a bad day at work, there was my art form at the time was my job. So I didn't have something to turn to for self-expression. So I do a lot of writing now. I make stuff, even though it's terrible. I'm terrible at arts and crafts, but I still make stuff. I actually got really good at making those spirit bottles with the pendulums inside. I ended up selling those at art shows and everything before the pandemic. But I write stuff. I have a lot of different projects that I do besides just the performing aspect. I consult for people. I do a lot of other stuff. I do have a lot of side gigs, side hustles in this stuff that, yes, performing is what I make most of my living from. But in the last year, I've written stuff for other performers. I've produced stuff for other performers. And that has definitely been nice, especially in a year where I can't go out and perform as much. But also, it's, so again, having multiple streams of income, having multiple passions is all okay. I think there's this idea has to be all or nothing. Which again, I think is becoming pretty outdated. Again, you can be a singer who does sculpture. You can be a painter who runs, marathons. There's so many different things that you can do besides just making your art form, your career. And some people, that's the only way they work, and that's absolutely fine. And there's some people where it's part of what they do, and that's okay too. Even podcasters, there's a lot of podcasters who they're comedians full-time or musicians or whatever. And the podcast is the other creative outcome. So again, going back to having those multiple outlets, I think is very useful.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, the way you put it too. And that it got me thinking, I think people are quick to kind of get down on having to also have have to do something else to make, pay their bills and get by while also pursuing, because this isn't making as much as they want, whatever. And I forgot who it was that said it, but I think I heard this from somebody, but either way, I'm going to steal it. It basically, if doing that is going to help, is going to allow you to do this, then you can almost see, like, if me working at whatever, however many dollars an hour job doing this, if it's bagging groceries, doing whatever, is going to make me be able to also do this. Like, if that's what I have to do to pay the bills and also can do this, then I just look at that as a part of my passion. Like, if I need X amount of dollars to upgrade the studio, when I'm at work, I'm thinking of, okay, this, this many, I got to put this many hours in at this to get that. And I kind of just consider it, I'm doing like the backward, I'm basically making those lights happen. I'm making that equipment happen.
There's a great book called Make Art, Make Money. I think it's by Elizabeth Hyde Stevens. Can't remember if that's the author or the narrator, but it's on the audiobooks on, Audible and all that stuff. And she basically models Jim Henson's life and how he didn't want to sell out and commercialize the Muppets. He didn't want to commercialize Elmo and all these, items, these characters he was using to educate children on children's television. And finally, his manager told him, well, no, this will be another creative outlet for you. You can have, full creative control and all this other stuff. And we forget now, people like us grew up with movies like Labyrinth and The Dark Crystal. Those were produced by Henson with his own money. They didn't make a lot of money at the theaters because they didn't have a big studio backing them, but they've stood the test of time and people grew up with those movies. And those movies were paid for by Bert and Ernie lunchboxes and Tickle Me Elmos, So you learn to make your art, make money. And it really goes into like, she breaks down how like art is kind of meant to be a gift. So that's kind of where like the art and commerce clash comes from. It's like, this is supposed to be something you give. This is supposed to be something that comes from inward. How do you justify making money off of it? And how do you relate to that? And she does a beautiful job. It's a great book. Everyone should read it if they're going to be a creative artist, professionally, part-time, whatever, make art, make money. It's wonderful. It's great. And it says all these things way smarter than I ever could.
I feel that too. I mean, that's anytime I'm quoting anybody, it's usually butchering the job that they could have done themselves. But
Same.
So Joe, you mentioned before we went live that you had a couple of things you wanted to showcase potentially here today.
Sure.
Now we'll save the like an audience one till the end.
Yeah.
But if
that said, if people are listening, what you'll need for the ending is 10 cards. Now, they don't have to be, they can be playing cards, but they can be Uno cards, baseball cards, tarot cards. Even if you've just got 10 note cards that are blank on both sides, those will work too. You just need 10 of them. You don't need a whole deck. So definitely, listen to the whole podcast if you're listening to this after the fact, or stick around till the end. But just in case someone's like listening, driving home from work after the fact or something, don't just, let it play through to the end. Make sure, you listen with 10 cards in hand to make it as cool as possible. But that said, you and I can do something right now, Darren. That's
okay.
Cool.
Let's try it. Let's try it.
All right. Do you have a pen and paper handy?
I do. That I do. We're good.
Okay. While you're getting those together, I've been doing a lot of thinking, like a lot of people during the last 12 months. We're recording this in April of 2021. So we're coming up to hopefully the end of the pandemic. Hopefully in 5 years when people are listening to it, they don't go, ha ha ha, they thought it was the end. Hopefully they're like, God. Oh yeah, that was when like the vaccines were rolling out and everything's going good.
Yeah.
Hopefully. So I've done a lot of thinking this year. And one of my favorite things to think about is the idea of parallel universes. The idea that somewhere out there in the universe, or just right next to our reality, there's another universe just like ours, but a little different, there's a couple gags where like there's a world without shrimp, those kinds of things. That was a gag from Buffy. But my favorite kind of parallel universe to think about is a parallel universe where everything's the same but opposite. So for example, in that parallel universe, I have a podcast and you are my guest rather than the other way around, right? Yes. And in that, everything's the opposite. So people work all night and sleep all day. And in that parallel universe, they've all been stuck outside for the last year.
Okay.
So we're going to do, I know this can get very heady very quickly. So we're going to do a quick little experiment in this parallel universe. The way we're going to do this, Darren, is, and just to be clear for anyone listening, you've got like a table surface in front of you. If you were to write something on that piece of paper, I would not be able to see it, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. He cannot see. He can
Okay,
only see what you guys see.
Yes, exactly. So I want you to write down a 3-digit number. Make sure all the digits are different and no zeros. Because if you do 001, that's just 1. I want it to be a genuine 3-digit number. Okay. So go ahead and write that down right now. Don't give me any clues about what that 3-digit number is. Okay.
Okay.
And just let me know once you've written down that 3-digit number.
I have got it.
You've got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, again, think about this. In that parallel universe where everything would be the opposite, the other you would have written down that same number, but backwards. So instead, like, let's say you wrote down 1, 2, 3, they would have written down 3, 2, 1, right?
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead and do that. Reverse that number. If you wrote down 1, 2, 3, write down 3, 2, 1, and put that like kind of off to the side. So you've got 2 random numbers there, right? And now again, in the parallel universe, that other person is doing the opposite. So now, even though it's the opposite there, you and this parallel version of yourself are on the same page now, right?
Yeah.
Now, what would you do? Would you add those 2 numbers together, or would you subtract them?
I guess I would add them.
You would add them, which means the parallel universe version of you would do the opposite. They would subtract them, right?
Yeah.
So you can pull out a calculator if you have to, but subtract the smaller number from the larger number. If you need to pull out a calculator, you can. Because you might have to do some carrying and such. That's a-okay.
Yeah, just so it's a little.
That's okay. Or so it's a little faster too. I mean, you could do the other way and get a negative number. That honestly doesn't matter, but it would just be harder to do if you don't have a calculator. Don't tell me anything about the total. Just let me know when you've got the value in front of you. And again, in the opposite universe, they would have done the opposite and they would have come up with a different number, right?
Yeah, I've got it. I've got my number. So
you've got it. Is it still? Yeah, you subtracted.
Okay. Yep.
Still, so you got it down to a new number. Is it still a 3-digit number?
It is still a 3-digit number. Yeah.
Okay. Here's how this is going to work. I'm going to shut up in a moment because it's kind of bouncing back and forth between the two of us. And here's what I need you to do. I need you to count from 1 to 9 and look right at the camera as you do that. You're going to count from 1 to 9. And here's the other thing too. I'm going to try this. Actually, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to try this without looking at you now that I think about it. I'm going to close my eyes. I'll put my fingers on my eyelids. And that way people who are listening can play along with me as well and see if we can pick up on some of the numbers that are in this total.
Okay.
So I'll do that and just count from 1 to 9 for me very slowly. Go.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Did you want me to go again?
No, I actually know 2 things just from that one run through. The first thing I know is actually pretty obvious and pretty simple and very elementary, and that is there's no 0 in this, because if there was a 0, you probably would have panicked or been confused at the end, right? Yeah. So this number does not have a 0. Again, I told you not to start with 1, but again, with all the subtracting and everything, it could have come to 1. So I'm going to say that right off the bat. There is no 0. There's no 0 at the beginning, middle, or end of this, correct?
Yep. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Okay. And I'm also going to say that none of the numbers repeat either. It's not like, again, like 1, 2, 2 or something like that. They're all individual digits. Yes.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
All right. Count through them again for me. 1 to 9. Go.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Okay, your voice really dropped on 9 both times. So I'm going to say there's a 9 in it. Don't tell me yes or no yet, and don't tell me where it is. I'm going to try and figure this out. Okay, so 9. I'll tell you, just look at the first number, and I'm going to go for this. I'm going to just say I got it when you're looking at the first number so that I can see you when you say it. Just look at the first number.
Okay.
And say I got it.
I got it.
Okay, you're looking down a little bit. I'm not sure how accurate I'm.
Do you want me to look up while I do it?
No, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to say the first digit isn't the 9. I'm going to say the first digit is a 2. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
It is. It is. Yeah. It is a 2. Yeah. All right. So that means it's either 2-9 something or 2 something 9. I'm gonna say it's 2-9 something. Don't move your lips.
Okay.
Just say the last digit over and over in your head. Look right at the camera. Look at it over and over your head. Like 777. Is it 297?
Yeah, it's fucking 297.
Yes. Yes.
What the hell, dude?
Whew.
Wow. Holy cow, dude.
Now, what's cool is if someone listening did follow along, I think someone got something close. Maybe they got the opposite, but vast majority of your listeners will, of course, have gotten something different. But I think 1 or 2 of your listeners are freaking out because their number is very similar right now. Because that's amazing.
Wow, dude, that is insane. That is crazy. I just, why? See, that's the stuff where it's like even that I can't. It's tough.
In fact, okay, so a couple people are going crazy in the chat on YouTube. I'll tell you what, if anyone on YouTube, just to make sure it's totally different from Darren's, if anyone in YouTube got a 2-digit number, I'll give it a shot. Just someone say I got a 2-digit number. Don't type it in. We'll see if I can do this. If no one messages, we won't do it. But if I'll leave that open in case someone wants to give this a try over YouTube. I'll have to do something a little different. But if someone got a completely different number, or if someone got like a 2-digit number who's following along, I'll give that a shot with them. But it's crazy, right?
It's insane. I mean, I really am. It's weird because like a reason I picked I don't know. It's just weird because I'm like,
it's really weird, right?
I'm sitting there like thinking between 1 3-digit number,
so,
and then I switched, and then
underneath that, let's just go for this. I'll because the number, each of the numbers, that's each individual digit. I'm gonna go for this. Could you just make like a simple drawing or a sketch underneath that number? Not like don't go for like a stick figure or a house because that's pretty obvious, but still something relatively simple. Can you do that for me real quick?
Okay, under the number that you guessed?
Under the number. Yeah, okay. Under the number. We'll give this a shot. And if okay, it looks like Johnny Fluker said I'll try it out. Johnny in the chat, did you get a 2-digit number? If you took a number and tried it out, if you followed along with Darren a moment ago, if you wrote down a number and subtracted it and everything like he said. If you got it, I'll give it a shot with you. If not, I'll do something a little different with you if that's okay. Just let us know either way.
Okay. In the meantime, I'll draw an item in the meantime.
Yeah. And did you draw it already or no?
I didn't yet. I didn't.
Okay, go ahead and draw it right now. Johnny followed along. Okay. This is going to be hard with
Do you want to focus on that one first, and then we'll do this?
Let me just look, because I'm just going off of a name here. Okay, Fluger, no H in Johnny. Okay, so this is weird. So I said a 2-digit number because I wanted to just trust my intuition and go for it. Getting the sense that, so normally I'm getting a sense of 2 individual numbers, but in this, I'm only getting 1 digit. So I'm going to say it's the same. Johnny in the chat, I'm going to say it's 99. I know that's probably not right. I'm just going to go for it and say 99. Type in the chat what your number is, because if maybe one of them is a 9, maybe I'm close. But I'm going to stick with 99 for right now for Johnny. While he's doing that, Darren, are you done with your drawing?
I am not. I got sidetracked. I was excited.
Okay, that's okay. That's okay. Go ahead and make the drawing.
Okay.
And again, keep that off frame. I'll keep an eye on the chat down here on my end. Again, just something simple that you can hold it to the camera that you can verify. Oh, Johnny, it's 79. So I did get one of the digits. So I'll tell you what, Johnny. Well, you can go back on YouTube and check this out. Okay, so 79. Now I know a little bit about how you think. Let me go with this. All right. Johnny, I have turned over a card in this deck, so it's facing the opposite way. I've just got a red deck of cards. I turned one card over. Johnny, I want you to comment with any playing card. Value in a suit. Don't do the Ace of Spades or Queen of Hearts, and abbreviate it. So if you did think of Ace of Spades, you would do A-S, A for Ace, and S for Spades. But it could be like, for Queen of Hearts, it'd be QH. If it was 10 of Diamonds, it'd be 10D. So write down that card in the chat. I've turned one card over in the deck. We'll see how close I get with you on this. Darren, are you done with your drawing?
Yes, just about. I switched
Okay,
drawings
okay.
because I was
Oh,
so bad.
oh, okay. Is it still of the same thing?
It is. It technically it
Okay,
wasn't really anything. It was a really
okay,
bad
that's
attempt to the first
okay,
one
that's
I had.
fine. I'll keep this in frame for right now. I'll keep the deck. I've got which is one of my business cards and a marker here. Let me know when you're done, and I'll give this a shot here. And keep an eye on the chat for when the card comes in. Again, I'll keep my deck in frame, so I cannot change it. And we'll give this a
Okay, am I
shot
going or is
here.
he going? Should I read his?
Hang on just a sec. I'm gonna draw. Are you focusing on the drawing already?
Oh, here I will. I'm focusing on it now.
Yeah, focus on it. Oof. I mean, I got a weird thing at an angle here. Not sure what the orientation is on this. I'm going to be honest. Don't show us your drawing yet, because I think, okay, Johnny's card did come in. I'm going to keep these in frame. Don't react at all yet, Darren. I'm just going to show you what I got. It's very simple, probably too simple. This is what I drew. I'm going to show this to you right now. We'll compare with yours in a moment. But I want you to verify. You can see in the chat that Johnny commented with the Jack of Hearts. And I want you to see that in the deck, like I said, I really did turn over one card. So out of all these cards, only one of them is turned over. And we got close with 79. I said 99, Johnny at 79. But now Johnny said Jack of Hearts, and I got that spot on.
Oh,
that is Jack of Hearts
Jesus.
for Johnny.
Jesus.
Now, again, Darren, let me hold the drawing up.
Okay.
I think I was too simple on this, but I'll go with it. Again, I'm not sure what the orientation was. It was kind of like this as I drew it. Hold your drawing up. Let's see what it is.
Okay, so
and I'll shut up. So
my
switches
drawing
over
was
to you.
it was a lamp. I was doing an umbrella first, and I switched to a lamp. So I had it at an angle. The first one was at an angle. It's really bad. I don't know if the camera can even focus on it. I was gonna do an umbrella.
But hang on, hold it up though, because I am getting. I mean, you kind of scribbled all this out, but yes. I did get the sense of something here, and then like a big like circly mass underneath. So I'll consider. You know what?
I think you were
with the number.
On. For
what's that?
Everything considered, I mean, I changed what I was doing. I think that's pretty close already.
Yeah, I'll call that. Yeah. Let's just 79. This okay, Jack of Hearts. That was spot on. We'll go with that.
Yeah.
and that's the other fun thing about this too is like, it's not like with traditional magic, the rabbit comes out of the hat or it doesn't. I love that. I don't know. Am I going to get just one digit? Am I going to get just the suit, the value, the general shape of something, all the numbers? That's what's fun of it for me is that even I don't know how accurate I'm going to be sometimes. And yeah. I like for me too, I've had people say, the first time I completely was totally wrong on stage. I had someone thinking of a time and I had a big board. It was in front of like 900 high schoolers. I had the teacher up. He was thinking of a time. I wrote down 2:34. I held the giant board over his head and said, name the time you're thinking of. And he said 8:45, like one digit right in completely the wrong order. And I just went close, chucked it away before he could see it. I was close, right, everyone? And everyone laughed. I shook his hand and he went back to his seat. And what was hilarious is that the person who booked me came up to me afterwards, was like, I thought your whole show was all tricks, but then that happened. I didn't know what to believe. Like, wow, he's really going for it sometimes. It's like, yes, I have a script. I have a plan. I have a backup in case anything goes wrong, because it all has. So hopefully, people will remember the parts that I, got right and forget about the other part. But like at the same time, if I'm wrong, you'll notice I'm actually I'm excited whether I'm, of course I'm excited when it does land, of course, but there are moments where I'm like, I don't know, I'm going to go for it, see what happens. And again, that's part of the fun of it for me, and to see where it goes. I mean, how boring would it be if you knew every single, football kickoff was going to end in a touchdown, like automatically, like, yeah, if you got to, the end goal, no one goes, oh, that was a waste of time. It's like, whoa, what a great run. Look at all the stuff they did, ducked and dodged, and look how far they got. That's part of the experience, at least for me. It might be different for other people, but that's what I love about this. Because again, I don't know where it's going to go, and I don't know how people are going to react too. Yeah. I mean, you've seen at the Maxwell, I've had people scream. It hasn't happened in a long time, of course, but I've been hit.
Oh my
playfully.
God. Oh, okay.
I had a 70-year-old woman smack me across the face once when I guessed her granddaughter's name. She just went, ah, whack, and without thinking about it. And the instant it happened, now it wasn't that hard, but we were on an elevated platform in like a big ballroom, and it was before I had a beard, so it just echoed. So it sounded way worse than it actually was.
Oh no.
And she was instantly regretful. She was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And I played it up like, oh wow, okay. Can't imagine what you would have done if I got it wrong. Ha ha ha. But again, I don't know what people are going to say or do. I don't know how it's going to go. And that's part of the fun of this. So Johnny Fluger is going, bro. I think that deserves a subscribe on YouTube, Johnny, at Joe Diamond Live on Instagram and all social medias.
Go check him out, Johnny. Come on.
I think that deserves one, Johnny.
I'm gonna have to bring Johnny to come see you. He's a friend of the show.
Yeah. And again, quick, since we're just talking about that real quick. Yes, of course, that's the quick plug. But I'm doing this on Zoom currently every Friday. I will be doing shows throughout the summer, probably not every week, but I will continue to do virtual shows for the foreseeable future because I think it's great. I think it's great that I can have people locally, like the show you were in. There were people from New York. There were people from the West Coast, all over. Like that's part of the fun of it. So I will continue to do virtual shows. So no matter where in the world you're listening, you can see me regularly through Zoom. And of course, if you're in the Midwest, live shows. Again, fingers crossed, we'll be coming back in the fall. So at least for me, because again, my shows are so small, like because it's 13 people, like I think I'll be able to come back a lot sooner than most performance venues. At least that's where it looks right now. It could change, hopefully not too much. But that's the working plan for now. But no matter what, I'll be doing virtual shows for the time being. And of course, all that in person and virtual will be on JoeDiamondLive.com, my website. So
yeah, you guys got to go check out JoeDiamondLive.com if you haven't already. Also, so Joe, I mean, moving on from that, which was incredible. I also want to say this too before we move on. Joe's his show, as I mentioned earlier, it is phenomenal, and the virtual one, it does not skip a beat, and it continues to like build. It builds up with,
and it's fully interactive. Over half the show is interactive with the whole audience at once.
Yeah.
So even if, like, yes, I'm bringing people on screen and talking with them like you and I are, but even just following along, there's stuff I'm doing where everyone at home is following along at the same time.
Yeah.
And taking part in some of the stuff. So it is fully interactive, no matter what. So if you want to be a part of this and check it out for yourself, you can, of course, watch and not have your camera on and just watch the show passively. If you want, that's totally cool. But if you want to try this out yourself, this is the best way to do it.
So speaking of it being interactive, I can't imagine there being a more interactive thing you've done than when you drove the 1966 Pontiac around
GTO. It was a GTO. Yeah.
Blindfolded with what, the alderman? Was it like the alderman?
It was the city alderman. It was the chief of police and the fire chief
of
in Woodstock, Illinois. If you Google Joe Diamond GTO, it'll show up on YouTube. The whole video. It was a crazy day. It was fun, but yeah, that was a big to do because we had, local law enforcement involved. It was a fundraiser, kind of a Kickstarter type thing where if they raised this much, the alderman would be in the car, this much, it would be the fire chief, and the most would be the chief of police. And we hit that goal. We smashed it. So yeah, the chief of police had to take a ride with me with a blindfolded driver. So actually, there's a clip that's not, go ahead.
Oh, wow. We can get into that too. I want to know, how do you even get to that point? Like, how does that end up being even a possibility for like Woodstock to consider doing this sort of fundraiser?
So there was an event called Art Walk going on there, and they had seen me at a bunch of events. And I basically ended up helping them hire different entertainers for that event. There were musicians. I had some magicians walking around, and escape artists, and everyone had their own theme. So like a friend of mine was an escape artist. A friend of mine was a more sleight of hand-based magician. I was a mind reader. And we've done that for other outdoor events too. And there have been like guitar players. We had a tarot card reader, all this stuff. So they wanted to do something once a month. And each month we had to come up with like a big stunt. So one month, a friend of mine did the Houdini straitjacket escape. Another month, I hypnotized a young woman, put her on display in one of the shop windows as a real life Sleeping Beauty. I have some video of that. I'm not really known as a hypnotist, and I have some ethical things with hypnosis.
Okay.
long story short, we're in the day and age of consent. And so if the act is, I'm going to make you do something against your will, that could have a slightly negative vibe, which I'm not about. And a lot of hypnosis shows are like that. Not all of them, for sure. I have some friends who are hypnotists who have phenomenal shows, but I haven't found a way to make that not about it for me. Yeah. And again, this was one of them where I hypnotized her. She was in like a Sleeping Beauty type style prom dress. And then her boyfriend, who's now her husband, showed up in like a crown and a cape and came in and kissed her on the forehead. And that's what woke her up. And she was fine. She was just asleep in a window for 3 hours, taking a nap, barely moved. And it was very cool. One day I'll put the video of this on YouTube. I probably should, because like I took cell phone video of him going in and waking her up, and it's like from the inside, so you saw everyone like looking in at her, which was an interesting perspective. But I didn't post it then for a couple of reasons, but because the newspaper had really taken off with the Blindfold Drive, which was the next month. And that was the thing that people really latched onto.
Yeah.
And it's an age-old stunt. There was a mind reader who did it with horse and buggy in the 1800s. So the Blindfold Drive is a publicity stunt for mentalists and mind readers since before cars existed. So that's how much of an old chestnut it is. And yeah, so this was kind of my take on it. And they wanted something fun like that. And this was a fun way to do that. And what was funny is I was expecting to get some pushback of like, no, you can't do that. You shouldn't be able to do this. You shouldn't be able to do that. And like everyone, the chief of police, the mayor, everyone was like, oh yeah, we'll close it on the square. Oh yeah, this is fine. Oh yeah, we'll donate a car. Oh yeah, State Farm will sponsor it. Like, okay, they all just, a big part of that was because of Sue Stelford. She's an amazing woman. She runs a lot of events in the city of Woodstock, and she can make things happen. So a big part of that was because of, the biggest part of that was because of her. I think if I was going to all these places by myself saying this is what I wanted to do, it'd be a little rougher. But because I had someone backing me up and it was for a good cause and all this other stuff, I think that definitely helped. Okay. But yeah, if you want to look at the video on YouTube, the full video of me driving around, they had drone footage. They have GoPros in the car. So
it's
yeah,
very well done.
It was pretty cool.
Well done.
Yeah. Shout out to Turnkey Digital who did that in Woodstock.
Yeah, they did. You did a phenomenal job driving the car.
Not crashing the classic car. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
And they did a great job documenting it. I just thought that was super cool. And I remember I have shown some people that video just because they don't believe me when I say that you've done that.
Yeah.
Now, like you've explained, how like magic was like your way of bringing like the entertainment that moved you, is whether it was movies or radio, to real life kind of. How do you go about I guess honing that craft, other than, I know the street performing with Six Flags and are you talking more like how do I write the material, or like more of like the presentations behind it? Is that kind of what you're saying? Or how do you where is it that you are going? Is it you have to get magic books? Is it you have to go to seminars from magicians?
Got it.
Where do you learn magic and whatnot?
There are books. There is online content now, just like with everything. There's a company that's kind of like the Amazon of magic. They do everything from, videos of lectures of different performers you can download. And they've got books you can buy and props. And again, there are people who their whole job is they invent stuff. They invent stuff for performers on TV, the ones that the TV performers don't buy, that then usually sell, on their own website or one of these magic retailers for everyone else to do. For me, I really try to look at old books. I really try and create my own stuff. I'm still using the same techniques, but I'm trying to come up with a new and fascinating way. So just for example, that's something we just did. The thing I did where I guessed your number is almost the exact same technique as guessing like someone's PIN code, for example. But guessing a PIN code has more meaning than a random number. So how do I make the random number mean something? Well, the story about parallel universes and everything, and making you do some stuff now makes it more entertaining. Because the other problem with mind reading is, think of something. I got it. Show's over. Yeah. How do you make that last for an hour? Just, extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. Okay, if you do it 3 times as proof, okay, fine. Now what else? So I'm more, and there's lots of people who are trying to come up with new ways to read minds, new ways to accomplish this stuff. And that's fine, but like a lot of the techniques I use go back to like the 1500s. There's a technique I use in my virtual show that is from a book called The Discovery of Witchcraft, which was published in 1884, I want to say. It was the first book on magic in the English language ever published. And there's actual spells and charms in there. There's also something in there that shows a knife with a gap in it to make it look like you're cutting into your arm. There's an illustration of that. And there's also a technique, I won't say which one, but there's a technique that I use in the first half of my virtual show that dates back to that book.
So we got the dark hold here of the real,
the full on dark hold. Yeah, for real. So and again, for me, that's super amazing that I can take something so old and adapt it into a modern medium here. I think that's great. But of course, like, how do you make that happen? Like, guessing a name and guessing a number are basically the same thing, but they feel different enough. That's why I'll have people, like, for example, at one point in the show, I have everyone open up books and someone picks a word out of someone's book and I try and guess the word. And then there's a point, like almost immediately after that, where I have two people think of streets in London. Just one's a real street and one's a made up one. Those are very much relying on the same techniques, but there's a build. With the words out of the book, you know, I start by getting the letters and eliminating all the letters until I get the whole word. And there is a sense of, okay, is he whittling it down? Is he figuring it out? And then with the streets, I just instantly name the street. So it's just like, whoa, okay, where did that come from?
Yeah.
So I am trying to find a build. I'm not just another mentor of mine, Ross Johnson. His whole show is a build. It starts off with psychological techniques, and by the end, he's just pulling stuff about people out of the air. And it's like, how could he be doing this? And there's a progression. Because again, if you just walk out, there was a gag that performer who no longer is with us. He would come out as a character named Cardor for conventions of other magicians and mystics and such. And he had like a radio antenna out of his turban. And it was just a comedy act. He would come out. There's an old video of him. He just came out and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, Cardor knows all. You, sir, I know what you're thinking. You, ma'am, I know what you're thinking. You, sir, in the back, I know what you're thinking. Thank you." And then just left. And if you were a real mind reader, that would be the act. The act would be that short. Think of a number, think of a color, think of a location. This. Thank you, bye. So how do you make that entertaining? How do you make that engaging? And again, the way I do it is with, you know, books, and then the story about my wife and I wanting to go to London, but we can't. So let's take an imaginary trip there. You know, the same thing, like just storytelling. Yeah, there's storytelling, and I'm looking for stories just as much as the material. The last in-person show I did was Mystic, where the theme of the show was I talked about different real-life mystics from throughout history. I talked about Edgar Cayce, who was known as the Sleeping Prophet, who claimed he could put a book under his pillow. When he woke up in the morning, he had absorbed all the information. I talked about Alexander, who would look into a crystal ball and tell people about their lives. I talked about Pamela Coleman Smith, the woman who designed the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot deck. And part of that script became part of the virtual show that you saw with the piece I used you for, and that you participated in. And so to me, like, telling the story about this woman who designed this famous occult object is just as engaging, and if anything, makes what we're doing more. Forget about if I get the tarot card right. That story is really interesting, and I really try in a lot of my shows. I feel like, I'll be completely honest, I don't feel like the virtual show is quite to this point yet, but I've also only been doing it for a year, so that's fine. A lot of shows, you know, usually like the second year is when they really like crystallize and become really really in tune. But like I've noticed that, again, the virtual show is the only one where I feel like there's not as much going on, where if there was no mind reading in it, it would still be as entertaining. Because again, the hook is, the other thing too, I think, is right now people want connection more than astonishment, more than a lot of performers, a lot of mystery entertainers go for astonishment. And Lindsay and I, we watched a couple of virtual magic shows, and she was like, it was very clear that one performer was going for astonishment and was like struggling. And Lindsay was just like complaining about it. I was like, well, I think he's going for astonishment. I think that's what's hard. Because like, if you're on stage, you don't need a great engaging personality if you're doing something astonishing. And at the end, it's astonishing. It's like, oh my God, my bill with my name on it appeared inside the lemon. Like it doesn't matter how funny or engaging that person was, that they still achieved that astonishing level.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And when you don't have that level, when you're not in person, a lot of that's gone. So now you just have to be an engaging person. And I told Lindsay that was the struggle with it. And she just said, we live in astonishing times. I'm tired of being astonished. And that's when I realized, I think for this medium, for at least virtual, for right now, at this point in history, people don't want to feel astonished. We could open our news app at any time, any day, any morning, and feel astonished. Yeah. I think people want to feel seen and connected right now. And that's the big part of the show. And now, yes, I hope that we hit astonishment and mystery and all those things along the way, of course. But I think that's like kind of the thing, the whole thing about it. This show, more than anything else, is less about the effects and the history and the stories around it. It is more just genuinely about the people. Like you saw, I genuinely chat with someone about their career for a good 3 to 5 minutes at one point in the show.
Yeah.
Sometimes, because sometimes when in corporate events, I'll do that with the boss or the CEO, because everyone knows them. And, if you ever had to tell your employees a lie, that's always really fun. Mm-hmm. But that's also fun when we've got someone on screen that no one knows. We're getting to know that person together,
I agree with that 100%. Now, when it comes to developing an act or developing the specific, I guess I don't know if it's disrespectful to call them tricks. Is it?
Some people call them effects. Some people call them pieces of magic. Some people call them mind reading effects.
Just pieces of entertainment, like the things that you're choosing to do.
Pieces.
Is there a way? Is there a way in which that someone could steal something from somebody else in the community, or is it more so like you guys are? Is it like I'm borrowing this technique and then accompanying it? Has there ever been an issue with that in the magic community?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to. So first off, there's a couple things that I do that a lot of are based on techniques that have been around for 500 years. So another performer could just watch it and know what I'm doing, and then just steal my presentation or my script for it. And that, to me, is almost worse than stealing the actual method or technique or whatever. Because like that's the thing that I really work on and like shows the most personality,
Yeah.
Like
that came from you.
At least for me. There are things in my show that are very heavily, that were scripted by someone else. They were from a book or something, but I've, like a piece of theater or Shakespeare, I've rewritten it or at least adapted it, and I do it in my own voice. But there are some pieces that I can't do as is. There's some things I do that work perfectly. Usually if it's in a book or video, or if it's published, like that's basically the thing. The common gag with magicians is, oh, is that in print? Or where's that in print? That's code for you fooled me. I want to do it, and I want to know, or I want to do it. Is that in print? Is that in print? Is that yours? There's a lot of that. That said, stealing, yes, it's rampant. And it's no better. I can't think of a better way to discuss it because we just hit the centennial. And I think we're coming through a little bit of a revival with it. Sawing a woman in half.
Yeah.
It was invented by someone named P.T. Selbit. And almost instantly, the idea was ripped off. First, it was sawing through a woman. Then it was separating the boxes. Originally, they just tied down a woman in a box, sawed the box in half, and opened it up. She was still tied down. She was okay. But then it was separating the boxes. Then it was doing without a box and using it with a blade. And all these magicians ripped it off so much. This was in the early 1920s. I think it was 1920. Don't quote me on that. I know there's going to be a historian in the chat. Well, actually, it came out in 1919. It was around 100 years ago, because I remember seeing something about the centennial. But it was right around women's suffrage. So think about it with women's suffrage. Holding someone down, tying her down, sawing her in half.
Yeah.
And yet she lives. it sums up everything that was going on at the time. It sums up everything going on now. Mm-hmm. And there was the reason why that, and people talk about, oh, that's the oldest trick in the book. It's only been around 100 years. And yes, dismemberments, cutting, you know, one of the first, like from ancient Egypt, a magician was pulling a head off a chicken. But something about sawing a woman in half, like you think about magic, that's where you go. It's that and pulling a rabbit out of a hat, right? Those are the two opposite ends.
Yeah, yeah.
And in many ways, you can't get too more cliche or cheesy or for lack of a better term, rudimentary or baseline tricks or pieces. But why those two pieces? There's a lot of things. There's card tricks. There's lots of tricks with rope. Why those two pieces? And it's because those pieces ultimately are about life, death, and resurrection. Life, she's tied down. Death, she sawed in half. She lives, resurrected. The empty void of the hat, nothing. And now a rabbit, not a duck, not a rabbit, something that's known as life and birth and reproducing.
Yeah.
They you know, they humped like rabbits, you know, sex, all of it. That's what's coming out of the hat. Lots of performers have produced animals, ducks, turtles, everything, but everyone focuses on rabbits because they're the ones that relate to life and rebirth and sex. Like that's what it comes down to. That's where those things, and that's why I think that trick, again, there's a million ways to do it. People have come up with ways to saw people in half. This way, sawing them in thirds, where you can see it, where you can't see it. There was a performer named Ricciardi who would put on like a gown and would just say, this is a trick. This is a trick. Take out a giant buzzsaw, lay down his daughter, buzzsaw through her, and blood and guts went everywhere, and stop the show for 40 minutes to allow people to come up and look at it up close. And there were people going, did he kill his daughter on stage that night? Is it really a trick? There was controversy. When Sawing a Woman in Half first got started in the 20s, people would sensationalize it. They would, one magician said, oh, I'll do it with a different woman every night. Come to the theater at this time to audition. And so they had a line of women around the theater, and they just paid a stagehand to go out with a bucket of pig's blood and dump it in the drain. And all these women scattered like rats, and the theater was full for the entire run. Because all these women now went around saying, I went to audition, but oh man, they came out and dumped out a bucket of blood. Let's go see that show. Someone might die, you know, or not, who knows? So that was a big part of it as well. So you have everything. You have life, death, danger, hope that they're going to survive, hope that they're not. You know, why is it a woman, not a man? You know, that we're cutting her in half right where the womb is, you know, where the reproductive areas are. Why was it this way and not this way? You know, there's a lot there. Philosophers and people way smarter than me have you know, psychologists have gone into why for all of this stuff. But I think it's a lot deeper than just putting on a glitzy outfit and cutting a pretty girl in half and she's okay. There's definitely some aspect of that where it's like, hey, look, we've taken death and made a mockery of it. We're in a sequin jacket. She's smiling while I'm cutting her in half. What is a better way of humans triumphing over the worst possible thing than turning it into a kind of burlesque? So I think there's a lot to go into with that stuff. So I don't know if that was the I know you were asked about stealing material, but again, if it's a good trick, it's going to be stolen. There's going to be different versions of it. But like there's a million, you know, I do try to make sure if I'm going to do something, I do something that's usually very difficult. So then it's usually, I don't get my stuff ripped off very often because most of the stuff I don't publish usually is the most difficult stuff. That said, I have put out stuff. There used to be Magic Magazine, which was like a people magazine for magic. And I contributed something that I do in my current work to this day. I won't say which item it is. People who are in the industry will know which one I'm talking about. but I contributed it. It was based on two techniques. It was basically my scripting and story. I had taken two techniques from early seance work and combined them into something that was more modern and put a new story to it. And I published that in a magazine because I knew if another performer saw it, these are things that are over 100 years old, they would be able to steal it. So I was like, well, let me just publish it so my name's on it.
Yeah.
And, you know, and people, and there are performers elsewhere in the world who do a version of it or have taken that idea and turned it into something else that fits themselves and makes it their own. And that's totally cool. But yeah, so I did that because it was something that was, for lack of a better term, stealable. The stuff that is a lot harder, like no one else has tried to solve the world's largest corn maze blindfolded because it's super difficult. It's super, super difficult.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that's part of, if you're willing to put in the work, and even people like Penn Teller have said this, a big secret of this stuff is to put in more work than anyone else would think about. I put more work into something that lasts 3 minutes than most people. Like I polled my audience a few years ago asking, have you tried to look up how I've done stuff on YouTube and such? And it was 70% no, I just like the mystery, and 30% said, yeah, I totally did. And half of that 30%, I messaged all of them, but half of them responded because I asked them if they found anything. And half of them all wrote back saying, no, I tried looking for 5 minutes and gave up. Because like if they really wanted to know, they'd be in this industry with me. They would be in this art form. I think a big part of it is people don't want to know. Like, do you want to know how they make Iron Man fly around? Sure, you can go online, you can learn the computer programming, you can become a special effects artist, or you can just go, oh, that was cool, go home, eat dinner, and go to bed. You know, I can't wait for the next one. And I think that's where most people are. I think Magic and Mystery Entertainment does wear that mystery aspect of it on its sleeve a little more. It's a little bit more reliant on it, but at the same time, I think it's for a more important thing. I mean, Albert Einstein himself said the most beautiful thing a human being can experience is the mysterious. Mystery is the cradle of all true art and science. And Einstein was no dummy. So he was basically willing to say, like, okay, there's some things we don't know. There's some stuff that's mysterious. And that's the cradle of where all this stuff comes from. So if someone gets really frustrated, like, I can't figure it out, I'll tell them that quote and say, so the more mysterious this is for you, the closer you are to being Einstein.
That's a good way. That's a good way to look at it. I like that. That's fun. Fun way to flip that on its head. I like too your response to me asking about if people like steal like acts and tricks and whatnot, and kind of the way you put it. It's honestly similar to, not exactly the same because it's a little bit more based in like the techniques like you were saying. But it's similar to like that of the music industry with a lot of people,
and comedy. A lot there happens a lot more with comedy. A lot more people there's jokes that are called hack lines, or there are lines that no one knows who wrote them. They use them. Some that are in mind reading and mentalism and magic. Some are like, make your mind a blank. Oh, that was quick. I do this because I love it and it's fun. I say, what's your name, Darren? That's correct. You know, I do things like that in certain contexts, not all of them, because I have a cheesy sense of humor. We've met, we've met, of course, but like we've hung out in person. You know, that's who I am all the time. Lindsay and I, we do cheesy jokes to each other all the time. I do try to give my own spin on them. There's a lot of them where it's like, you know, magicians will do like, hold out your hand. No, the clean hand. Oh, that was the clean hand. You know, or stand right here over the trap door. There's lines that everyone does. And actually someone I haven't met in person, but he wrote a book where he talks about how to take those lines and replace them with lines of your own, or at least take them out of your work. Because there are some performers that just do that. They get the laugh, they move on, and they never contribute anything original to it. And my rule is, okay, if I'm going to do what's known as a stock line, my rule is I have to write 5 other original ones. My opening line again for my show is a play off my name. No one can steal that because it's mine.
Yeah.
It's literally my name. Your name has to be Joe Diamond in order to make those first few jokes work. And I worked on those with a friend of mine. But there's premises. I mean, there's some people, and of course, there's lots of egos in the industry. It's like, oh, I was the first one to come up with the idea of doing a card trick backwards, or I was the first one to come up with the idea of doing mind reading with, a pineapple. And then there's some magicians who are like, no, you used a red deck, but I used a blue deck. So it's different.
Gosh.
Like there's this is stuff that people literally say. The other problem with the industry is that there's a lot of amateurs. The majority of people who consume and take in are amateur performers, amateur magicians, and so forth. So it's not a lot of people who do it for a living. And that's true of a lot of industries for sure. Yeah. But as a result, you get lots of egos, lots of butting heads. It should be done this way. It should be done this way. And I try to tune it out. I just try to be the best performer and artist that I can be and give my audiences the experiences that I think they're looking for when they come to see me. They're looking for that mystery. They're looking to be seen. They're looking to, maybe learn about history or experience something unknown. And those are the things I'm interested in. I've noticed that, again, the weirder I get, the more on board my audiences have seemed, for whatever that reason might be. So I'm not, again, it does still happen. There are Carlos Mencias of magic who someone will do something on TV and then this performer will do it at their blue and gold banquet show on Friday. There's lots of that type of stuff. It happens all the time. And, I do my best to make sure I have permission to do stuff where it's not, if it isn't mine, or be inspired by something else. I really do try my best to make sure of that. As far as I know, I've been pretty okay. I've still ticked some people off, but that's a whole other discussion. But I guess if you're not ticking someone off, you're not doing anything interesting. So I guess
if you the only way to not piss anybody off is to not stand for anything. I think that's how the quotes go.
Exactly.
I want to know, in all that, is there something that you wish you had known at the beginning, like when you started thinking, like, I want to go down this path? Is there something you wish you would have known, knowing everything you know now?
Yes, of course. I mean, there's the joke of like, invest in Zoom, invest in Apple, invest in Facebook. Sure, there's of course all those. I wish I would have started reading more like marketing and sales and business books more. Earlier. I shouldn't say more, but earlier. Because I read, I can never pronounce his last name. Is it here? Oh, crap, where's that book?
I've got tons of those marketing books and whatnot lying around. That's what I'm
there's that. There's a book. It must be stashed away. Oh man, I need to find it. I can never pronounce the author's name. It's a name that this white guy from the Midwest cannot pronounce. Like the last name literally has 15 letters in it. It's just called Creativity. But I read that book when I was 17 and it blew my mind. And I got very artsy from that standpoint. And I wish I had, and I see creativity in all areas of my work. Like I think of, like, I'll sit down and try and brainstorm 10 different ways to promote something, a show or an event I have coming up. And I just see marketing as just another creative outlet. And once I started seeing marketing as just another creative outlet for me, it stopped feeling like a dirty word. There's definitely a certain level of like people who are just always marketing, but like there's nothing they're selling. So yes, obviously have something worth selling before you start marketing. So maybe I did do things right. Maybe I did work on having a good show worth selling before I learned how to market better. That said, still probably would have gotten me through the 2009 recession a little easier.
Gotcha.
I do wish I had been more patient. I feel like I tried to do a lot early on, thinking like this is just what it was going to be forever. And like, it is a process. It took me a long time to figure out, what venues I wanted to work at. I didn't have to chase, $50 house parties forever. I could just, and again, like finding a venue, being more open with, I think creating a venue of like the Dole Mansion of like, okay, I didn't have an idea of, oh, I want to do a show for 13 people and do that every week and have that be my main source of income. I found that place, thought it'd be a cool place to do a show, and slowly over time developed that. And I think if I had tried to make that overnight or make that my first initial goal, oh, I'm going to do this, try and sell it out every week, I think I would have frustrated myself. I think a lot of younger people, they're super goalful. And it's like, okay, I want to do this TV show, then America's Got Talent, then I'll do this, then I'll do this, then I'll do this, and I'll have a killer YouTube. And it's like, I think I got really wrapped up in results in the last 10 years. And I haven't just like gotten as much enjoyment out of just the process as I could have and should have. I don't get me wrong. There were a lot of moments where I did just fully enjoy the process, but I could have done that a lot more. And I think,
I get what you're saying. Cause I get that too, where it's, I talked about this a while ago on the podcast where I think a lot of creators, we suffer from kind of robbing ourselves of like the present moment. And like that we're always kind of focused on like the next thing we want to create, or like if you're trying to make it into like a career potentially, like you want to hit whatever certain goals or milestones, and in doing that you sometimes, because you're always working to the next thing, or if you're trying to book the show, you rob yourself of
here's how I'll officially answer your question. Yes, first of all, being present, I always try to remain extremely present during shows. Like I'm not the kind of performer who's thinking about the food they're gonna order after the show or anything like that. If it's going great, I want to be present. If it's going terribly, I want to be present. I don't care. I just want to be present more than anything. I want to be as real and again connect with the audience in that moment as possible. All that said, if there's something I do wish I would have known is I think I'm trying to think of like the good way to put it. Cause you were just talking about, again, like with music, same thing with music and always looking to like the next thing and getting to the next gig and all that other stuff. And I think I've just tried to, my plan for 2021 is to not be super goalful. Like last year I should have just taken more of a break. But I was so in my head, I was shifting. I also started seeing a therapist and started taking antidepressants. So last year was a big fluctuating year for me. And this year, I'm just trying to focus more on, hey, if I don't have a show for 6 days, fine. That is okay. Like to me, a week where I've got no shows booked and a week where I've got 6 shows booked, I am equally happy about. And there would have been a time where if I didn't feel like I was working at least 4 or 5 days a week, I would feel like I was being lazy. And I think that came from, again, the recession, where if I didn't work for a whole week, that means I wasn't going to make rent. And that's not the case anymore. I've saved, I've learned a lot and everything else. And I think if there's anything, it's being okay with just saying you don't know. Just say, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm trying stuff and figuring stuff out. And yes, there has to be a certain aspect of fake it till you make it with confidence and all that stuff. I'm definitely one of those people. But at the same time, I think you're so focused on the next step of the career that you can you lose out on, oh, this is a lot of fun. Yeah. Just sitting down with like these random props and just trying stuff and see what happens. That's where you're going to find the stuff that it has the most meaning for you. Mm-hmm. And yes, there are days where you have to put on your independent business owner hat and be like, okay, I got to go through my 1099s. There are going to be days like that. Yeah. Don't let anyone tell you this is going to be easy if you just follow your dreams. It's not. It's going to be harder. You have to learn how to, keep track of your expenses. You're going to have to learn how to market. You're going to have to learn all this. So 2019, I don't want to get into numbers. I don't want to be rude, but just to give you an idea, because again, we did talk very openly about my education and all that in the first recession. 2019 was my best year financially.
Mm-hmm.
I paid more in taxes than I made my first year out of high school. Like it was my best year career wise. I did a ton of stuff career wise, financially, creatively. I created a lot of stuff, all that. Check, 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 check. 2020 hit, and I was paranoid. I was so paranoid for the first few months of the pandemic last year. I started consulting, I started working on other stuff, I started writing, and I did end up doing stuff for other performers. That was a nice supplemental income and everything else. Did I make as much as I did for my most successful year? No, absolutely not. But because I wasn't traveling as much, because there wasn't as many expenses and everything else, like I didn't have, basically, for long story short, like when I really looked at like the full spreadsheets of everything of the 2 years and everything I was sending to my tax preparer, it was like, oh my gosh, I the year I drove myself crazy with marketing, and then the year I drove myself crazy thinking I wasn't going to do nearly as well. Like we're pretty similar years structurally. And again, if you want to look at the raw numbers, yeah, one was significantly higher, but also because the expenses were significantly lower, what I ended up grossing was not that far off. It was not, again, not the same,
Yeah.
but not a million miles away either. And I realized at that moment, like, I was grinding for the sake of grinding. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have to worry, all that extra work and all this other stuff was, and again, I'm not saying this is an excuse to be lazy. This is not, this
No,
is
I
not,
I
this is
understand
not.
what you're saying. Yeah.
But there's a difference between hustle culture and actually hustling. Hustle
Yeah.
doesn't exist on Instagram. It exists, replying to those emails. It exists showing up to the meetings. It exists in all those ways. And yes, all that stuff is important, but I think there's been a vibe of, if you're not working, I think social media has made everyone think like you have to be a shark. If you're not moving, you're dead.
Mm-hmm.
And at least for me, I'm sure there's some people out there that, yes, that is the only way that they can work, and hopefully they make it. It's not at the expense of everything else in their lives, their friendships and everything else, relationships, but also like, yeah, it's okay to not know. It's okay to, take a day job. A good friend of mine, she's a comedian. She was in Chicago for many years, has two Amazon Prime specials, and she moved back to her hometown in Arkansas and is now a educational aide for special needs students. That's her job. She still does like Zoom events and stand up workshops online and such. And she's like, oh man, when this is over and like I go back to doing stand up full time, I'm going to have so much new material from working with these kids.
Yeah.
Like the stuff they say is hilarious. They say stuff that's more hilarious than I could have ever written. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, you never know where that stuff's going to come from. You can work hard, but you don't have to grind yourself into the ground either.
I think that's a good way to
I,
put it.
so I think if I did have advice to my past self, it's just like, be gentle with yourself and enjoy it. Like if you're like, the point of why I do this is so I don't have to be stuck in a job that I hate. There have been days that have been great with this. There have been days that have been a struggle and where I'm really working and I'm really focused, but I definitely got trapped in a workaholic mode for the sake of work, not for the sake of happiness or even really money. Like there are days where I did, gigs, not because, or I worked myself into the ground, not because it was the most amount of money, but just because I felt like that's what I had to do.
Yeah.
And, if you can make a living, with your art, and you can support yourself and buy sandwiches along the way, you're doing it. You are doing it. Forget about how many Instagram followers you have. Because guess what? One EMP goes out, hits the US, and those people will never have the career. I know if I had, like, yes, I got the in-person stuff taken away this last year, and I had to work purely virtually. But I know if the opposite happened, I would still be fine. Again, with all this stuff, it's not about never bombing or always killing. It's about knowing that, yeah, some days you're going to kill it. Some days you're going to get crushed. And if you're crushed, you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. It's not a destination. It's a journey.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. That's something that I've been trying to myself understand better as I've been, maneuvering my way through this like content creation, especially with music and everything. I know there was a time, it was last year actually, the end of last year, I was working on I released like I did like 9 weeks straight of I dropped a single. I released a single for 9 weeks. And I'm doing right now, I'm doing that too with the 10 weeks. We're 2 weeks in. We've got the third week coming this week, every Friday. And so I had to have a conversation with one of my my friends who's an artist on my label, and I was basically venting to him, like I was freaking out. I'm not going to be able to hit this deadline. Like, you got to submit songs a certain amount like ahead of time so that they can get pitched to the playlist and make it in Spotify and all these things. And I basically had was calling him freaking out because I'm like, dude, I'm not going to be able to meet the deadline. Like I've been at this every day. I can't hit this note. I can't sing this. I can't do whatever. And he just looked at me and he was like, he started basically listing off like a bunch of things that I had done previously, like accomplishments or releases or other things. And he's like, dude, he's like, I'm not stressed out. I'm like, dude, why are you not freaking out? Like, I don't hit this, like we're going to suffer, we're going to whatever. He's like, dude, because I know you're going to do it. And I know right now you're just worrying about it and you're and I think it was a quote where somebody said, if you worrying about something just makes you have to go through it twice. If the bad thing happened that you think is going to happen, worrying about it makes you go through it twice.
That said, yes, mental health is its own thing. I'm not a therapist. Okay, so here, that said, so this brings me back to all this. Two things. Number one, I don't know if you're into South Park at all, but there's a documentary called 6 Days to Air, where they basically wrote between their musical, Book of Mormon, and all this stuff, they basically had crunched themselves into where they had to write and conceive and put together and voice an episode of South Park in 6 days before it had to air. And it's fascinating to see the whole creative process. But in the years since that came out, they missed a deadline. They actually did miss a deadline at one point. And guess what? They were okay. They probably had to pay a fine or there was something weird. Sure, it was a pain, but they survived. That's okay. So either way, think about that. Or everyone who's an artist, look at that. Also, going back to, all these deadlines and all this stuff, the worry, if there is something, there really, really is something, like this is it. Forget everything I said. There was garbage. I'm in the future now. I know better. I'm older. I'm wiser from 5 minutes ago. What should I tell my younger self? Get a therapist sooner. Take care of your mental health sooner. If you're going to do this full time, bonus, it's a tax write-off. Actually, I don't know. Don't take my word for that. I don't know. I know some comedians who do have it. Even their cable as a tax write-off. I'm sure there's a way to do that. Not sure.
Yeah.
Speak with your financial advisor. That said, invest in yourself, even if it's not tax write-off. Invest in yourself. Having one for the last year has helped me so much. Getting one, and I know mental health, insurance, all that stuff. It's its own conversation. Do whatever you got to do. If you got to take a day job, so you got benefits, so you can have one, do it. Absolutely. And that said, until then, or along with that, this is not meant to replace that. This is not alternative self-care. This is complementive. That's what my friend calls alternative medicine. She's like, I don't care, don't call it alternative, call it complementative. Do it along with taking your prescriptions and listening to your doctor and all that. Something I put together, I call it a praise file. When you get a cool comment, when someone writes you a message, when someone says, hey, that song really hit me, when this happens, take a screenshot it and put it in a file on your phone. I take pictures of it. I have a folder on my phone of emails, social media comments. And there are days where, it stinks and you need a booster. The fact that I've been able to look at my phone and see a message from one of my favorite authors who I've become friends with now, talking about, really nice things about how they've enjoyed my work, it's helped. Like, yes, you don't want to be that person who's like, yes, I look at this because I'm awesome. It's great. There's a difference between that and, there's a difference between ego and self-care. An ego, stay humble. The day you get an ego is the day you'll stop learning. That's the big word I heard from. Like, the more humble you are, the better you're going to be. I've met people with big egos in this industry, and they're never the coolest people. They're never the most successful. Do they make a lot of money? Do they have a career? Sure, but they're never in the top, in my opinion, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
That said, with this kind of thing, it's self-care, it helps, and there are days where, yeah, you're gonna play 5 shows in a row and they're all gonna suck. You're gonna be in that rut. You don't know why. You're gonna be like, crap, I lost it. And going back to that is great. You don't want to live in the past. You don't want to look at old videos of your show going, those were the days, the glory days and everything. That's not what this is. This is about when you're out of fuel. You need fuel for the journey. The Bible itself says, before you take the speck out of someone else's eye, you got to take the log out of your own. You got to take care of yourself. You got to fill up your own cup if you're going to pour some out for other people's. And this is a way to fill up your own cup. It's a way to do it. Hold on to that. Again, I have it. I look through it every couple months. Your mileage may vary. You may need to look through it once a week, maybe even once a day. Again, if it's that bad, hopefully, therapist, all that other stuff. Again, not an expert in mental health. No, just saying.
I think it's
this
great,
is something that has worked for me.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic. I've never thought of that, and I actually, I'm probably gonna incorporate something like that into my routine of some sort.
Have it. Print them out, put them on your bathroom mirror. Get if a hero says something about you, put it on a trophy and put it on the shelf. Like, do it. Put it on a plaque, something. You can do that these days. Whatever. And again, that's meant to be the days, because again, performing is a give and take. And there are some days where you've given it all and you've got nothing back from your audience or your show or whatever, and you just need something to fill that cup up. You just need something. That's the kind of thing to go back to. That's the kind of thing. And again, those things, I have a lot of great testimonials that I'm very honored and happy to have from people I consider heroes. But what's in that praise folder are not the things that are on my website and, all those things. It's not that. Those are the things that are in messages and emails. Because again, that to me is a good way of keeping, reality and showbiz separate. I think that, yes, that's the buzz to help sell tickets and everything, and this is more for me. And I think that's the difference with ego. I think if I were looking at my promo clips or my TV appearances or all that stuff, that would be something completely different than just looking at an email from one of my favorite authors saying, hey, your thing that you sent me really spoke to me and I'm starting to use it. That's the big thing that means a lot to me versus again, someone saying, oh, the best person ever, blah, blah, blah news and all that's great. And there's a time and a place for that. But again, for talking just for days where, be proud of the work you've done. I mean, take a moment to be like, this is fun. And wow, there was a moment I posted it on social media right before the pandemic. And it was like, man, if you had told 5-year-old little Joey that within a week he was going to be performing in a haunted mansion, performing at a theater in Chicago called the Chicago Magic Lounge, especially for magicians in the mystery arts, and going on the radio and doing this and doing a tour, haunted tour in his hometown, I would have been over the moon. I thought at the time I wanted a Las Vegas theater, all the guys on TV and everything else. But if you told me this, I would have been even more thrilled. I would have been like, oh my God, yeah, sign me up for that. Yeah. And it's okay to just take a moment and be like, this is fun. I'm proud of the work I've done. And again, you need that fuel. It's a journey. Everyone says, if it's not a destination, it's a journey. Guess what? You need fuel for the journey. And this is a good way to remember that.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely, I mean, really, when you were saying it, it almost felt like I know you weren't, but it felt like you were talking even to me. I feel like I need to do something similar because there are definitely days where, you get burnt out or you kind of lose sight of I always think back to and I have this on my wall in my, this is the podcast studio. And I have another studio where I record my music and stuff like that. And in there I have all of my previous releases ever up on the wall.
And that's great.
And
Oh,
that's a
that's
great,
awesome.
like, and so my first songs are terrible. So like it's fantastic for me sometimes when I'm
Hey,
having a
if
really
you look,
bad day.
that's the difference. If you look back on your first song, it's like, oh, those were the days. That was great. Then yeah, you're not growing. The point is to look back and be like, oh, that was awful. I'm much happier with where I'm at now. Like that's the
Yes.
point.
And that's what I
Because
try
I've
and tell
seen
myself.
performers. I saw a performer. Well, he's not a performer anymore,
Oh
but
man.
he talked about how he would play old clips of his shows from like the 80s because he did like a lot of these casino shows and everything on his big TV and everything. And it was like, oh, that's just sad.
Yeah.
That's just sad, dude. Like, no. So yeah, that I think is the perfect difference. You also pointed out something of having separate spaces, having this space where I do, this has become a performance space now. My desk is, yeah, this is where I do my emails and all this other stuff. And I've gotten good at sharing spaces, but like the fact that I've got like this area for shows and the studio, the fact again that I've been able to have spaces, whether it's the coffee shop, having a variety of different places to chill, to veg, to be creative, to socialize. Like the coffee shop can be any one of those things. The movie theater, I can go to the movie theater to just turn off my brain and watch a movie or to get inspired for new ideas. So having a variety of those places, and again, like you've got, the podcast area and the recording area, the fact that you've got those places, it does something to you when you're like, okay, this is the space to be musical. This is the space to be conversational. This is the space to just be alone with my own thoughts. Those kinds of things. Austin Kleon talks about them as bliss stations in his books. By the way, Austin Kleon, Steal Like an Artist, Show Your Work, and Keep Going. He's got 3 books for creatives. They're awesome. Everyone should read those. So that's another recommendation I'll give as well.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. You mentioned too. So I got two last questions for you, Joe, and
Okay.
then we can.
All right. I'll make sure my answers for these are shorter so we can
That's fair.
or at least more concise. So I'll think about them more.
That's fair. What do people get wrong the most, or what's the biggest misconception when it comes to someone who it performs in the mystic arts as you do? And you could take that if it's easier. You could take that for any one of the subgenres if you have a good
sure. Oh, I mean,
it.
for magic in general, people think it's just for kids. With mind reading, I learned not to introduce myself even just as a mind reader because they go, "What am I thinking right now?" Or if I ask, "What's your name?" They say, "Well, you tell me." There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
Which is why I always say, "Oh, we'll try some mind reading," or "Would you like to try some mind reading?" Or some people call me a mind reader, or I'm a kind of magician. Like that's why I like phrases like that, because it's not. There's something for planting your flag and saying, "This is what I do. This is what I'm awesome at," and do it. But I've noticed with that, especially coming from a heavy set white guy with a beard, like it just comes off as confrontational. And I want to. I want to stay as humble as possible, both for my own, self-sanity, but also with people. I want this to be, in art, you can do something to someone, you can do something for someone, or you can do something with someone. And I want to do something with people. And if I say I'm one of these things, again, having those labels, I find just kind of puts up a wall sometimes because they think, oh, he's going to do this, or it's a joke or a gag, or I can't really do it, or he's a weirdo, all that stuff. I think for me, I get asked if I'm a medium a lot. Like, that's why I have the joke, I'm not a medium, I'm a large, which I wrote by myself, but found out later there's a street joke similar to it. But like, yeah, I had people all the time. I said, can you talk to my grandmother? I had that a lot after shows. Can you talk to my dead grandmother? Can you do this? Even when I would say that's not what I would do, they would say, oh, I know you have to say that for legal reasons, but you obviously have some sort of gift. So there's a lot of that.
Interesting.
And there's the opposite end of the spectrum where people are like, oh, it's all a trick.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, there are techniques. There are psychological ploys and tricks and techniques that I'm using in the context of a piece in my show. There are some times in my show where it is exactly what it appears to be. There are times I'm using some deceptive techniques, and there's some times where it's a mixture of both. Neil Gaiman said a great thing, because I have people all the time saying, is that true? And Neil Gaiman has a great line. I think it's in his Sandman books where he says, things need not have happened in order to be true.
Okay.
Which I really love. And
Very
I
true.
try to be as honest and real as possible. That said, even when I'm telling stories about historical figures, I mean, the act of telling a story, it's not going to be true. There's going to be self-editing, whether it's conscious or unconscious. So there are some things that I have had to trim in, like when I'm telling a story, whether it's for my own life or history, just to make it a narrative into a show. Of course, you know, that's just writing. When you see a movie that's based on a true story, you know, yeah, it didn't happen exactly that way, but like, the Facebook, it didn't have, that wasn't the whole conversation,
Yeah.
but like to make it a movie, you have to do that kind of thing. You have to
You got to edit it,
give a little bit of that. Yeah, you have to have that some level of suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing with it is that I think it could all be summed up for me is that I think the biggest misconception is that people think I'm trying to convince them or sell them a bill of goods or snake oil or those kinds of things. Like, oh, I don't believe this. Oh, I'm a skeptic. You're not going to get me. You're not going to convince me. And I was like, no, I don't want to convince you of anything. And like, I don't want someone going away. If someone goes away thinking it's all a trick, fine, they're wrong. If they want to go away saying it's all real, that's fine too. They're also wrong. That's fine. I don't care what people think, as long as they know what I'm doing is really difficult and I care about it, and I'm passionate about it. Like that's what I am in control over. And whether the people love it or hate it, I'm hoping there's at least that. And I want people to feel that connection. I want to, and yeah, there is a funness of the challenge of this guy can read your phone or read your phone code or read your mind or tell you your iPhone code or tell you the name of your first kiss. And I do kind of appreciate the challenge of bullshit. Try it with me right now. I do appreciate that a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I can. There is a certain level of that. It's not my favorite way to go, but that's part of the fun of it. And like it's different for different people. Like I've noticed, like to reel it back, like that's not, of course, what I do. That's not the case. They're crazy. Let me just show you what I do. And then hopefully by the end, I've kind of, rather than trying to exceed or climb the wall, I've kind of surreptitiously talked my way through the entrance.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Rather than trying to scale the wall or go through it or hit it with my car, I'm just trying to talk my way through the gate. I think before they realize, like, oh God, he's in. Like that's kind of my way of thinking about it. I think that's the biggest thing that people, are, just like, I noticed a long time ago, for good or ill, my superpower was not that everyone believed what I said, but that everyone believed that I believed what I said. So like, I'm very tongue in cheek. I'm very sarcastic. And I realize when I'm performing, that's the one part of me that I don't do a lot, because I think people just and this is also context, when people are drinking at the Maxwell and they hear it's a mind reader, there's not a lot of room for gray area. We're in a luxurious mansion. You can either do this or you can't. Like, let's get into it. So that's why I learned to like undersell with like, not saying I'm a mind reader, but let's try some mind reading. Little sentences like that shifted it, because I noticed that if I said something, even if they didn't believe it, they would think I believed it. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely.
So I learned how to, I learned like, the more real I can be with people, the better. It just came off as snarky, as insincere, and some comedians make that work. And some performers and artists make that work. That is a part of my personality that does not work in my art all the time. It sneaks in every once in a while as an aside, but like for the most part, no. So yeah, I think the big thing with it is like people think like, again, 90% of people, once they see the show, they get it. They're like, oh, okay, this is like, I've had people come to my shows who are like, and you can read like my reviews on TripAdvisor, who are like, I don't believe in any of this stuff, and I loved this show. Like, that's the thing. I want people who believe in mind reading to come and have a great time, and I want someone who doesn't have just as good of a good time and enjoy different things out of it.
I like that. That's fair. And I know when I had first met you, I was definitely I was like, I don't know. Everyone was telling me, oh, he can read minds and whatever. And I was along like those similar lines where I'm like, wait, like how is he read? What do you mean he reads? And people are explaining it to me.
What do you mean? And it doesn't matter how you explain it. It's like, well, because like I read like years ago, one performer was like, I don't read minds, I read thoughts. And it's like, what does that even mean?
Yeah,
like
now we're playing
like
semantics.
that doesn't, well, and it doesn't make sense. Again, for me, it just, and it may have worked for him, but it just puts up a wall for me. I want to be as real with people. Hey, I'm into weird shit. I'm into weird stuff. I look like a regular guy, but I'm into some weird stuff. Like, I want to talk about, like, yeah, I could just do a number trick and like guess your number, or we could talk about paranormal realities. You're thinking about that. And I guess then that's cool, too. So that's more of, and again, I think more people, again, on paper, it's like, oh, you can't convince me. Oh, I'm a skeptic and everything else. And again, they think it's a challenge. Like it's either right or wrong. It's horseshoes and hand grenades. And that, as you've seen in the talking and us now, there's a lot of different shades to it. So
yeah. And this is my last question for you. How can one annoy a magician? Like, what's something that bugs you?
There's so many easy ways. Do you want me to get my wife? She has a whole barometer of things.
I'm sure she does.
I think she's home now. How does one annoy? Say I've seen this one. I'll tell you, this annoys me the most, and it annoys a lot of performers, and I'm going to say it right now. Unless you want to annoy us, don't say it. Stop telling us this. And I understand. I've learned to smile, take it as a compliment, and move on. That said, deep down, when someone goes, oh, you know what you should do? There's this show, like USA's Got Talent or Skills or something. You know what you should do? You should go on that show.
Yeah.
You should just... Now, full disclosure, I've been approached by that show a multitude of times. There are a variety of producers I'm Facebook friends with, and I have friends who have done the show, and they've done great things with the show, and it's helped their career. That said, there are also people who it has ruined them. If you win, your $1 million prize is hypothetically, over this USA Has Got Skills show that I'm totally making up right now. Hypothetically, if you won $1 million prize, hypothetically, you'd only be paid $20K over the span of 40 years. And hypothetically, you could not work unless they booked you. And hypothetically, if you did work at something else, you owe them 20% of everything you make forever.
Well, it's the same thing with all those shows, with like with the singing one. If you win, you get a record contract, but they own the rights to everything you ever.
But how many people have been on that show? I mean, Jennifer Hudson didn't win, and she went on to win an Oscar, and has arguably been one of the most successful people who has ever been on that show. And she came in like 6th or 7th. Like,
well, they say it's like, way better to not win because you get the publicity, and then you don't have to sign the contract at the end.
Sure, but like, so, and again, there's people who have won that show and it's helped their career and vice versa. Like, there is but there's also a feeling of like, oh, you just go on those shows and everything's gravy from then on out.
Yeah.
And there are people I know who have been on those shows who have done phenomenal work, and they're phenomenally skilled, and they made it work. But I've also heard horror stories from behind the scenes of people. I heard the story, I won't say the full story of the performer, but as he was telling me this, it was like, it never made it to air, but like the whole thing he went through was like, oh my gosh. And I was like, yes, of course we thought about it. Like, and here's the thing too. Whether I know their heart is in the right place, but also, yes, I've thought about it. I've either gone on and was told no, or like, I don't want to. Like, those are the only two options. If you say that to any artist, any performing artist, yes, we've all thought about it.
Yeah.
And we either went, we auditioned, and it didn't go anywhere, and it was crushing. Because, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's for, the biggest talent show in America, or if it's for a wedding. If you don't gig the gig, it always stinks. Whenever, like, I try to be empathetic when people are job hunting and they're struggling, like, to lock it in. Because it's like, I've lived with this for 20 years, constantly getting work. Like, that's where I live. So it's very hard for me to be empathic, where it's like, oh, you don't know where your next gig's coming in? You don't know where your next job is? Yeah, that's Tuesday for me.
Yeah.
Like, that's so it's crazy. Very hard from that standpoint. So
it's somewhat of a backhanded compliment when they say it to you that way too. I feel
I don't think that's true for everyone.
I think they but it comes
I don't
out
think
off
they
that
mean
way.
it, but yeah, and especially when it's something we've heard all the time.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, magicians always, can you make my wife disappear? Can you make the check disappear? Can you give me the winning lottery numbers? Like,
Oh, God.
we've heard it all. We've
Yeah.
heard, like, there's a mind reader whose opening line would come out and say, ladies and gentlemen, I'm psychic entertainer so-and-so, 18, 24, 36, 72, 73, 85. That's next week's lottery numbers. I hope you were writing them down. I'm not going to repeat them. And now let's continue on. Like, we've all heard it. We've all heard it. And I think for all of those shows, I'll end with this story. I won't say who it was. And it's an urban legend, so I can neither confirm nor deny it, but it makes total sense. A performer, while they were a finalist on one of those Got Skills shows, they were a finalist and they were working a gig in between live shows for the show. And because they were already contracted to do an event, and someone said, and they were a finalist on the show, and someone said, oh, you know what you should do? You should go on that America's Next Top Talented Person show. And they were a finalist on the show. Like, as they were being told that.
No.
So, I mean, it's so yeah. So if it's like, mostly for me, I don't have anything that I feel is 90 seconds and flashy enough for it. Again, I want to talk with people forever and connect with them more than like stand on stage and go, look how awesome I am. The people who have done it and have succeeded at it are great. Colin Cloud, who was on a couple seasons ago, I have nothing but the highest amount of respect for him. He's published stuff for the community, and I use a lot of his genius ideas. He's super skilled, and he's done stuff with Shin Lim in Las Vegas. He's great. And there are other performers who have auditioned but never made it to air because it was disastrous because of a variety of different things. And, you know, I just don't know whether I got far along with it or not. I mean, there is one other show, I won't say the name of it, but there is a show that is a competition show that I would like to be on. And I have auditioned every year for the last 7 years. And people always say to me, hey, when are you going to do that one show? And it's like, I send them stuff every year. And I don't know why I've never been picked. Maybe they had too many white guys. Maybe I wasn't engaging enough. Maybe I'm not what they're looking for. And all of those things are okay. All of those things are absolutely okay. That's fine. Does it stink? And am I going to keep trying? Yes. But I mean, that's the thing. You got to be willing. I pitched myself to a radio program for 5 years before they finally had me on, and now I've been a regular for the last 6 years. So you got to plug away at it. So, and yes, it is at least for me, one of the hardest parts of the job. So if someone wants to annoy us, tell us what we should do, as if that will fix us and make us an overnight celebrity and all this stuff. Like, and
as
that's
if
the other
you
thing
haven't
too.
already considered it and been trying.
I have no problem with those shows as showcases. I mean, it used to be Johnny Carson. That's what you did, you know, and now it's this, and that's fine. That's A-okay. But the idea that once you do that show, everything's okay and you're a success and it's on easy street. I can't remember who said it. It's been in a million places. Success just means more work. That's all success means. Success just means more work. And I think the idea that, once they win, they're on easy street. It just means more work. And yeah, and again, I'm not saying never. I'm not saying, I'll keep trying for the things that I think would be a good fit for me and I think would be fun. But, and again, the other shows I have tried out for, I think would be fun. I have friends who have done those shows. It's like, yeah, that seems more my speed. Still haven't gotten on. Who knows what the future holds? But like, that's what, but honestly, I prefer doing like long form, like podcasts and shows. Like I just talked on a sports podcast. I read tarot for a sports team. And that's something you couldn't do in 3 minutes on like a talk show or on one of these Primetime Got Talent shows. I got to talk and like make a full connection with the host and explore some cool things in a way that probably is never done before and will never do again, whereas there's going to be something just as flashy and just as crazy the next season on one of those shows. Having that connection is at least a better fit for me now. That might not be the case in a couple of years, but if you want to annoy me or any performer, just say, You know what it actually doesn't even matter. Go on one of those shows. Just say, you know what you should do?
Yeah. Just
You should do
phrase.
daycare shows, whatever it is, whatever you're about to say. We thought about it. We don't want to do it. Just what you should say is, you know what you should do? My company event. Here's my card. Call me. Unless it's following it up with that. Don't tell us. Don't give us career advice. Please don't. We understand your heart is in the right place, and I appreciate it. You know, and I understand it's a compliment. I always go, yeah, I've thought about it, I've talked about it, but like it wouldn't be a good fit for me, I don't think, from the producers I've talked to. And I'll leave it at that. I'll sometimes go into more depth, but overall, you know, I just usually go, oh, okay, and move on. Just file it away.
That makes sense. I'm not gonna lie. I've not gotten that obviously quite as much, but I've definitely heard the you should line, like, you know what you should do line before.
Oh, you should put out one of those singles. What do the kids call it? Oh, you can just do it on the YouTubes and the iTunes now. You just like put your song. It's like, no, it ain't that. No, you don't just put it up and become famous now, Grandma. Like, sorry, don't mean to be ageist. I'm not sorry. I just meant that in general, just as a general statement, like, because people both old and young have said that type of stuff. And again, I've seen it with the younger performers, like, oh, I'll do this show and then do a TV thing and then do this, and it's like that's not how it works. That's just, you know, it is one part. And the people who do those shows, who are successful during and after, and again, I've met and talked with them, are the most driven, focused people you will ever meet. They didn't just wake up one day and go, you know what, I'm going to do this, and, you know, and just become great. Anyone can get hot for a year. Anyone can have a good year, a solid year, play whatever giant thing. Chris Rock talked about this on, there was a conversation with him and a couple other comedians. And I think they were referencing a semi-famous comedian at the time. I won't name who, because I don't know who he was talking about, but he's like, he said this, anyone can get hot for a year, play Madison Square Garden, all this other stuff. Fine. Who has a long-term successful career in this business and not stay funny? Nobody. And that's the thing. If you're not talented, if you're not skilled, if you're not willing to put in just as much work when you're famous as you are, that's why a lot of flash in the pan, you know, comedians, artists, one-hit wonders, this happens all the time, and they don't have the ability to sustain it because they were just using it as a quick get-rich-quick scheme, or to get famous, or to get a lot of money, and they're, you know,
they're here 1 minute, gone the next. That's why I think sustained excellence and people that are able to continually be at like the top of their field, they've always like caught my eye. I know a lot of people really get mad. I'm big obviously in the hip hop like world. I follow a lot of that stuff. People always kind of give me crap because I'm such a big Drake supporter. I love Drake's just the fact that he's been able to do, for people to disrespect him as much as disrespect as he gets, for being literally like the #1 artist in the world for however many years.
Everyone craps on Nickelback, and there's that comedian who has like a whole bit about like, what did they ever do to anyone? Keep a million bros happy? You don't want them ticked off? Like, come on. I think that's Shane something or Sean something. I can't remember. He's great. Look up Nickelback, Guy Fieri, comedian. He did it on Conan. But yeah, like, they didn't get there by accident, you know. And there's good talented people, there's bad, like what you like whatever, all that stuff. And like and it's amazing too, like, I'm not that much into rap and hip hop, but this last year, because of, well, we live in the southern Wisconsin area, so a lot happened in the Kenosha area in the last 12 months. So I listened to the first few NWA albums, and I was like, holy crap, these could have been written today. Like that was like a big thing for me. Like the music's great. Like it's not my favorite genre, but like the songs and the albums, I was like, wow, these have stood the test of time. There have been lots of flash in the pan rappers, but like all these years later, this stuff still holds up. It could have been written today. And I learned a lot from that. And I started looking at it, and it brought me someone who could never have that perspective that I wouldn't have had otherwise. So it's, you know, the world's a big place. There's enough room for everyone. You can be as niche as you want. Like, and again, like, it ain't, who was it? There's like a British singer. that someone was talking about. He's like, how many people here are familiar with this singer? And like, no one raised their hand. And he was like, yet it doesn't stop them from having a career, from touring. People buy calendars to show the passage of time with pictures of the singer. None of you have heard of him, and yeah, he makes a great career with it. And that's how it is now. You know, if you work hard, now more than ever, you don't need to be like, before it was a star or you were a worker. And now there's lots of middle ranges. You can have a strong, solid artist following as an artist, a comedian, a singer, mentalist, a magician, whatever. Have your audience that comes back and is loyal and brings in some new people. There are comedians who are hilarious, who have great followings, who sell out theaters, who aren't on TV all the time, who don't have sitcoms, and yet they make a very comfortable living doing what they're doing. And that's, there's a lot of options now.
I think you're absolutely right. We talked about that before on this podcast, where before it, I guess, like, I mean, I don't know when I'm really talking. I guess like early on, it feels like, or it felt like, if you were famous, you were famous. And now it's like, I can be famous. I could have 1 million followers on my social media, and I could still probably live in the same town that I do and still do everything I do, where people, you know, so many people are still not going to know who I am. 1 million is nothing if you consider the entirety of the world. So
now, again, don't know who it was. I think it was a comedian. It was, you want 10% of everyone to love you, not 90% of everyone to like you.
Yeah, that's a great way.
And and there's a 10%. There's enough population out there. There's enough people, you know. There's an audience for you out there. The biggest thing with the internet now is like, everyone's like, oh, how these people make a living just playing video games? Like, what? But there's an audience for it. They found their audience. They've got it. Screw whoever someone is like, oh, that doesn't make sense to me. Whatever. They're doing it. They're doing fine. You know, I'm sure there's tons of people who are like, what? That guy makes a living reading minds. Even after seeing my show, I'm sure there's some people who are like, what? Him? You know, I wouldn't pay to go see him. I mean, it was cool, but like, actually heard someone say that at the Maxwell once. They were like, oh, that was cool, but I wouldn't like pay for him to like come to my party or something. I heard that while I was packing up, and the other guy was like, well, I don't care. I'm gonna. And I was like, there we go. You know, I didn't need to get both of them to book me. I just need the one of them to book me. That's fine.
That's all it comes down to. Well, that's a great way to put it, Joe. And I think you've even in just this conversation, dropped a whole lot of gems for myself and for a lot of other creators, as well as the magician stuff.
People can get, I hope some people, whatever they are, you know, creators, you know, artists, whatever, I'm hoping if you get anything useful out of this, out of the stuff I say, it means the world to me. If not,
somebody does. I did, so it's all good.
I'm okay. One person. Okay. All right. There we go. We're done.
But I want to. What were you going to say?
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just wanted to thank you for coming on the show in general.
Of course.
When I first met you, it was like one of the first things that another guy that worked with us at the mansion, Harrison, who he helped me start the podcast. We worked on it together. He like immediately, because he had seen you do a trick before I got to, because I think you were down in the speakeasy and I was upstairs, and he came like running up to me and was like, dude, you gotta get Joe. We gotta have Joe. And like, I was too scared to ask you for like a couple of months, and then we finally mustered up the courage to do it.
Full disclosure now, anyone asked me to do just about anything. Podcast wise. Again, I just did a sports podcast. They asked me to read tarot for someone. Like, if I genuinely don't think I'm a good fit, I'll be willing to work to figure it out. If someone wants to chat with me, have me on, I'm an open book and to chat about stuff. Want to grab the 10 cards and wrap up?
Let's do that.
Be really quick. Do that. All right. Everyone grab your 10 cards. Again, these can be playing cards, Uno cards. They can even be 10 blank note cards or 10 of your business cards if you've still got them in 2021. Make sure everyone has 10 cards.
Here, take 10 cards. Just take 10 of these.
Yeah, 10 cards and shuffle them up. They can be any 10 cards and shuffle them up. Now, while everyone's shuffling the cards, I'm going to point out, and you can watch this on YouTube, or you can Google an image if you're listening to this after the fact. We were talking about the tarot cards before, and one of my favorite tarot cards is the Magician card. The Magician card represents power and control over the world around us. And I think that's something we all wish we had more in the last 10, 12 months. We all wish we had more power and control over the world around us. And that's what this card represents. So we're going to do a ritual that will allow all of us to create the impossible in our hands and to have more power and control over your life as well. So take your 10 cards and mix them up. We're going to use these 10 cards for a ritual. Now, if that word offends your modern sensibilities, you may simply call this a program.
Okay.
I stole that line from Doctor Strange. But once you have your 10 cards, shuffle them up. And Darren, is there anything I could know about your 10 cards or any of your listeners' 10 cards?
Anything you could know?
Yeah. Is there anything I could know? Like how many reds or blacks there are,
Okay, I got
what
you.
the cards are.
They are. Oh my goodness, 1 second.
Well, is there anything I could know right now? Like,
oh no, absolutely not.
No,
You'd have no
idea. Of
idea.
course not. Yeah, there's no way I could know about your listeners, you or anything. Well, actually, there is one thing I could know, and I do know. I know you have 10 of them.
That's fair.
Because I asked you to get rid of 10, or get out 10. So I don't even want to know that. So get rid of a couple cards. Now, don't get rid of just one. Get rid of at least 2. Make it a little bit harder. But at the same time, don't get rid of too many. If you only have like 1 card in your hand, or even just 4 cards in your hand to work with, this won't be that impressive. So just get rid of a couple cards. Again, make sure you have at least 4 cards in your hand so it's still impressive.
Okay.
And you can shuffle the remaining cards in your hand if you want. And then when you're ready, just hold the cards face down in your hands like this. Right. Let me know when you have done that. I'll give the listeners a chance to do that. If you're doing this with blank note cards, grab a pen. You'll see why in a moment. If you're not, it'll be fine.
All right.
Are you ready?
I'm good to go.
Okay. Take a look, pick up the whole packet, and look at the bottom card and remember it. Seriously, don't forget it. You can take a photo of it with your phone if you want. Okay. If you're just listening to this as a podcast, say it a couple times to remember. If you've got just like a blank business card or a blank note card, take a pen and draw an X on that card. That will be your target card. All right. And then hold the cards face down in your hand once you are done. We're now going to cast a spell over these cards. We're going to spell the word magician, just like at the bottom of this tarot card. It says the word magician down there. Here's how we're going to cast a spell. We're going to spell magician. So take the top card, hold it in front of you, and say M.
M.
And then put it on the bottom of the pile. Okay? That's the first letter of the word magician. Take the new top card and hold it in front of you and say A.
All right. A. There we go.
Put that on the bottom. And we'll keep going. Take the new top card and say G.
G.
Put it on the bottom. Take the new top card and say I.
I.
On the bottom. New top card. C.
C.
I.
I.
A.
A.
N. Finally.
And N.
And put it on the bottom. All right.
Gotcha.
So we cast a spell. Now we're going to do one more ritual. You'll notice the magician, 2 things about them. Number 1, it's not clear whether they're male or female. So this card could be anyone. It could be you. It could be me. It could be any one of your listeners listening. And you'll notice they have one hand pointed towards the heaven, one hand pointed towards the earth. That's because they're saying, as above, so below. It actually came from the Lord's Prayer, on earth as it is in heaven. So we're going to do that ritual. Take the top card and deal it to the table with the other cards you set aside and say, as above.
As above.
Now take the new top card and move it to the bottom, just like you did before. Move it to the bottom of the pile in your hands and say, so below.
So below.
Do that again. Deal the top card to the table and say, as above.
As above.
Move the new top card to the bottom and say, so below.
So below.
Keep doing that. Don't look at any of the cards. As above.
As above.
So below. Keep doing that until you're down to 1 card in your hands. Don't look at it. It's bad luck. Just hold it between your hands. Keep going as above, so below, dealing the top card to the table, new top card to the bottom. Keep doing that until you are down to 1 card. Hold it between your hands when you are done that.
Okay.
When you are down to 1 card between your hands, you're going to finish the ritual by saying the most profound magic words you will probably ever say.
Am I ready? Am I good to go?
Yeah, are you ready? Well, some people say abracadabra, which is a good one. A lot of people usually want to say it at that point. That's a good one. It's actually a combination of Hebrew and Aramaic, and it's not clear where it originally came from, but it translates to I create as I speak. This one is even older. I'm just going to give you the English translation. My mentor shared this with me. Repeat after me.
Okay.
The magic words are, I give myself permission to be powerful.
I give myself permission to be powerful.
Kind of weird to say after being in quarantine for 12 months.
It does feel weird.
But that should do it. You and your listeners should all now be magicians, just like the figure in that tarot card. And to know, you should now be holding your card in your hand. Take a look.
Wow. I am. Yeah. That's incredible.
You've got your extra special elf card there.
I do. It's still the elf cards because that's all I
So
have.
now you can keep this card or take a photo of it, use it as a good luck charm, and use it as a reminder to go forth and accomplish the impossible in your life.
Wow. Well, thank you, Joe. That was insane. We don't have a clap
Thank you.
track, but I'm clapping for you.
And you can, and your listeners can play this back, share it with a friend, or try it with a different number of cards and see if it still works for them. I think they'll be amazed to see that it keeps working.
That's insane. Well,
and if it doesn't work, just follow the instructions better next time.
That's fair. Well, thank you, Joe, for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Darren. This was a blast. This was an absolute blast. Thank you again.
Oh, thank you, man. That means a lot to hear from you, man. Especially getting to see your show and just, how much work you put into it. Just like
Thanks.
I said, the fact that you were even willing to come on is awesome. I also want to say thank you to everybody who tuned in live.
Yeah.
If you're listening the next day or you're watching the days after, thank you as well. I also want to say quick shout out to our patrons over on Patreon. If you're interested in becoming a patron, we have exclusive content over there of like behind the scenes of how I make my songs, how we shoot some of the videos that we do. So if you're ever interested in doing that, you can become a patron at Darren Rita or at patreon.com/Darren Rita, and they should be up on the screen right now. So shout out to them.
Sweet.
And yeah, Joe, you got any last words for our D-bags here?
Oof, any last words for D-bags? Stay spooky. That's been my phrase. I close my shows with that now, and that's kind of become like my phrase now. It's like just be as weird as possible. Be as authentically you as possible. And if you are normal, like again, like I related a lot to like punk and goth kids as a kid, but I never did the makeup, never did the piercings. I do have some tattoos now, but like, even if you just look like a James Corden clone on the outside, you can still be John Constantine on the inside. You can be as, authentically you as possible. And like, that's going to spook people. When you are as raw and as real as possible, it's going to be spooky to some people. So Stay spooky. There we go. I'll stick with that.
Thank you, everybody.
And thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. I will see you guys in the